The boardroom fell silent as Ethan Cole, covered in construction dust and holding a stack of documents, pointed directly at the billionaire across the table. "You're not just stealing from this company," he said quietly. "You're putting lives at risk." Victoria Hale watched the man who'd shared her table just 3 nights ago destroy her ex-lover's empire with nothing but truth and evidence. Outside, police sirens wailed. Inside, Damian Cross realized his carefully built world was about to collapse. This is the story of how one desperate dinner between strangers became a fight that would cost them everything or save them both. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let's begin. The February wind cut through Manhattan like broken glass. Ethan Cole stood outside the construction site on West 47th Street, staring at his phone screen, reading the text message for the 4th time. His hand shook, but not from the cold. Budget meeting. Monday. Layoffs coming. Prepare your crew. 12 years. 12 years of showing up before dawn, working through pain and exhaustion, never missing a deadline. And now Gary, his foreman, couldn't even tell him to his face that it might be over. Ethan shoved the phone into his jacket pocket and looked up at the steel skeleton of the building they'd been raising for 8 months. 32 stories of glass and concrete that would house people who'd never know his name. That's how construction worked. You built the world, then disappeared. "Hey, Cole!" someone yelled from across the site. "You coming or what?" Ethan turned. Miguel, one of the younger guys on his crew, was waving from the gate. Friday tradition. Some of the crew grabbed beers after work. Usually Ethan went home. His son needed dinner. Homework needed checking. The apartment needed cleaning. Tonight, though, Ethan couldn't face going home yet. Couldn't walk through that door and pretend everything was fine when his son asked about his day. Couldn't sit at the kitchen table under the fluorescent light that always flickered and think about how many more mortgage payments they could miss before eviction. "Not tonight, Mig," Ethan called back. "Got something I need to do." Miguel shrugged and disappeared through the gate with the others. Their laughter echoed off the buildings, fading into the city noise. Ethan walked. He didn't have a destination. Just kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant feeling everything he'd been holding back since 6 that morning when his son had asked if they could afford pizza that weekend. Such a small question. Such an impossible weight. His wife Sarah used to handle the money. She'd been good at stretching paychecks, finding deals, making their life work on a construction salary. Then came the diagnosis. Stage 4. The medical bills had swallowed their savings in 6 months. She died 2 years ago, and Ethan still couldn't look at their bedroom without seeing her there, wasting away despite every prayer and promise. He told himself he'd be okay. Told himself his son would be okay. Told himself that working harder would fix everything. But harder wasn't enough anymore. Ethan found himself in Midtown, surrounded by restaurants he couldn't afford. Crowds of people in expensive coats streamed past, laughing, holding shopping bags, living lives that seemed effortless. He stopped in front of a steakhouse with a gold-trimmed sign, the Hamilton. Through the windows, he could see warm lighting, white tablecloths, people drinking wine that probably cost more than his weekly grocery budget. He should turn around, walk to the subway, go home. Instead, he pushed open the door. The heat hit him first, then the smell of grilled meat and butter and money. A hostess with perfect makeup looked up from her podium, and Ethan saw her eyes register his work boots, his faded jacket, the dust still clinging to his jeans. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked, voice carefully neutral. "No, just me. Just dinner." She glanced at her computer screen, then at the crowded dining room behind her. "We're quite full tonight, sir. There might be a wait." "That's fine." She looked uncertain. "It could be over an hour. I'll wait." Something in his voice must have convinced her not to push. She wrote his name on a list and gestured toward the bar area. Ethan found a spot against the wall where he could watch the room and tried not to calculate how much this meal would cost. One night. One meal. He deserved that, didn't he? The restaurant hummed with conversation and clinking glasses. Ethan watched a couple at a corner table feed each other bites of dessert. Watched a business group toast their success. Watched families and friends and people whose lives hadn't fallen apart. His phone buzzed. His son. "When you coming home? Hungry?" Ethan typed back, "Soon. Leftovers in the fridge. Homework done? Yeah. Math test Monday." You'll do great. Love you. Love you too, Dad. Ethan put the phone away and closed his eyes. When he opened them, she was there. He noticed her because everyone noticed her. The entire restaurant seemed to shift when she walked in, heads turning, conversations pausing, the air itself changing. She wore a long black coat over what looked like an expensive dress, dark hair pulled back, heels that clicked against the floor with precision. But it wasn't her clothes or her looks that caught Ethan's attention. It was her face. She looked destroyed. Not crying, not falling apart, just empty. Like someone had reached inside and scooped out everything that made her human. She stopped at the hostess stand, and even from across the room, Ethan could see her hands trembling. The hostess smiled that same professional smile. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "No." The woman's voice was quiet, controlled. "Just me. I'm so sorry, but we're completely booked tonight. The wait is... Please?" Just one word, but it carried so much weight that the hostess actually stepped back. "I just need a table. Anywhere. I just need..." She stopped, straightened, pulled herself together with visible effort. "I apologize," she said, voice smoothing out. "I understand you're busy. Thank you for your time." She turned to leave, and Ethan found himself moving before he'd made a conscious decision. He crossed the restaurant in 4 long strides and spoke before he could change his mind. "Excuse me." She turned. Up close, he could see she was younger than he'd thought. Maybe 30. Her eyes were green, or maybe gray. Hard to tell in the restaurant lighting. "I have a table," Ethan said. "Well, I'm waiting for one, but it's just me. If you wanted to share..." He stopped, realizing how that sounded. "I don't mean anything weird. You just look like you could use a place to sit down." She stared at him for a long moment. Ethan saw her evaluating, calculating, trying to figure out his angle. He didn't blame her. Women in expensive dresses didn't usually trust men in work boots. "That's very kind," she said carefully, "but I don't want to intrude." "You're not. Honest. I work construction. I'm used to sharing space with strangers." He tried a small smile. "Most of them are louder than you." Something flickered across her face. Not quite a smile, but close. "Mr. Cole?" The hostess appeared beside them, holding 2 menus. "Your table is ready." Ethan looked at the woman. She looked at him. For a second, he thought she'd refuse. "All right," she said finally. "Thank you." The hostess led them to a small table near the back, away from the windows. Ethan pulled out a chair, and the woman sat with the careful posture of someone who'd learned to control every movement. "I'm Ethan," he said, sitting across from her. "Victoria." They opened their menus. Ethan scanned the prices and felt his stomach drop. $45 for a steak, $30 for pasta. He was an idiot, a complete idiot. He'd just invited a stranger to share a table at a restaurant that would clean out the emergency cash he kept hidden in his sock drawer. "Order whatever you want," Victoria said quietly, not looking up from her menu. "This is on me. No, I invited you." "I appreciate that, but I can afford it, and I suspect..." She finally looked at him. "I suspect you came here tonight for the same reason I did. Sometimes you just need to be somewhere that isn't home." Ethan should have been offended, should have told her he could pay his own way. Instead, he just felt tired. "Rough day?" he asked. "Rough life." She closed her menu. "You?" "Same." A waiter appeared. Victoria ordered a glass of wine and salmon. Ethan got the cheapest steak on the menu and water. The waiter collected their menus and vanished. Silence settled over the table. Not uncomfortable exactly, just heavy. Outside their small bubble, the restaurant continued its noise and motion, but at their table, 2 strangers sat in the wreckage of their separate lives. "So what do you do?" Ethan asked, because someone had to say something. "Real estate development." Victoria turned her wine glass in slow circles. "I run a company that builds residential and commercial properties across the East Coast." "Run it. Like, you're in charge?" "CEO." "Yes." Ethan nodded, unsurprised. She had that look, the way she held herself, the way she'd walked in, like someone used to giving orders. "Must be stressful," he said. Most people assume it's glamorous. Most people don't know what real work looks like. Ot. She glanced up at that, and for the first time something almost like interest crossed her face. You think real estate development isn't real work? I think there's a difference between running a company and building one, literally, with your hands. That's fair. Victoria took a sip of wine. What do you build? Whatever pays. Right now it's an office tower in Midtown. Before that, a hotel in Queens. Before that, luxury condos in Brooklyn that I'll never be able to afford. You sound bitter about that. Just honest. Their food arrived. For a few minutes, they ate in silence. The steak was perfect. Tender, seasoned, exactly right. Probably the best meal Ethan had eaten in 2 years. He tried to eat slowly, to make it last, but hunger won out. He'd skipped lunch, skipped breakfast too, because he'd given his cereal to his son that morning. Victoria picked at her salmon, taking small bites, mostly just pushing food around her plate. You should eat, Ethan said. I'm not very hungry. Then why did you come to a restaurant? I asked myself the same question in the car on the way over. She set down her fork. I think I just needed to be around people. Does that make sense, to feel alone and crowded at the same time? Yeah, Ethan said. It does. She studied him for a moment. You lost someone. It wasn't a question. My wife, Ethan said. 2 years ago, cancer. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry doesn't change anything. He took a drink of water, wishing it was something stronger. You? Lost someone? Victoria shook her head. Not to death, but I lost something today. Trust, maybe. Or the illusion of it. Business or personal? Both. My business partner, former business partner, tried to stage a coup during today's board meeting. He wanted my job, my company, my reputation. He spent 6 months building alliances, making promises, convincing board members that I was too emotional, too idealistic, too female to run a billion-dollar company effectively. She spoke without inflection, like she was reciting facts. He almost succeeded. What stopped him? I spent 7 years building that company from nothing. I know every contract, every investor, every weak point in our structure. When he made his move, I dismantled his argument piece by piece in front of everyone. Victoria finished her wine, but the fact that he tried, that people I trusted went along with it, that's what I can't stop thinking about. Ethan nodded. He understood betrayal, understood the way it hollowed you out. My foreman texted me this afternoon. He said, layoffs coming Monday. After 12 years of bleeding for that company, they're cutting people to save money. And I know I'm on that list. Single dad, expensive family health insurance, too old to work as hard as the 20-year-olds they can pay half as much. That's illegal. Proving it is expensive. Eating isn't. Victoria was quiet for a moment. How old is your son? He's 12. Smart kid, good kid. Deserves better than what I can give him. I doubt that's true. You don't know me. I know you invited a stranger to share your table when you probably can't afford this meal. I know you asked if I was okay when everyone else in this restaurant just stared. That tells me enough. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He focused on his steak, but the food had lost its taste. His name's Andrew, Ethan found himself saying. 12 years old, obsessed with science, terrible at sports, too smart for his own good. His mom died when he was 10, and I watched him try to be brave for me when he should have been falling apart. Now he asks me questions about money, about bills, about whether we'll have to move. And I lie to him. Every day. I lie and tell him everything's fine. Maybe he needs you to be honest. He's 12. I lost my father when I was 13, Victoria said quietly. Heart attack. One day he was there, the next he wasn't. And my mother spent a year pretending everything was fine, that we weren't drowning in debt, that she wasn't crying in the bathroom every night. I knew, though. Kids always know. And what hurt most wasn't the loss. It was the lying, the pretending. Ethan looked at her. Really looked. Saw past the expensive dress and the CEO polish to the girl who'd lost her father and spent her life building walls. I'm sorry, he said. Me too. The waiter appeared to clear their plates. Can I interest you in dessert? Coffee? Just the check, Victoria said. Actually, Ethan said, surprising himself. Coffee sounds good. 2, if that's okay. Victoria raised an eyebrow but didn't object. The waiter nodded and left. You don't have to stay, Victoria said. I know, but I'm not ready to go home yet. Are you? No. They sat there, 2 broken people in a crowded restaurant, and for the first time all day, Ethan felt something other than panic. Not happiness, not even peace. Just the absence of being completely alone. The coffee came. They talked about nothing important. The weather, the city, the construction tower Ethan was building. Victoria told him about a project in Boston, a mixed-use development she'd spent 3 years designing. Ethan told her about teaching Andrew to ride a bike, about the science fair project they'd worked on last year, about the little moments that made single fatherhood bearable. And then the door opened and everything changed. Ethan noticed him immediately because everyone noticed him. Tall, maybe 40, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ethan's car. Dark hair going silver at the temples, sharp features, the kind of face that belonged in boardrooms and country clubs. He walked through the restaurant like he owned it, and maybe he did. Victoria saw him at the same moment. Ethan watched the color drain from her face. Do you know him? Ethan asked. Yes. Her voice had gone flat. That's Damien Cross, my former business partner, the one I mentioned. Damien stopped at a table near the center of the room, greeting someone Ethan didn't recognize. He hadn't seen Victoria yet, but it was only a matter of time. The Hamilton wasn't that big. Do you want to leave? Ethan asked quietly. He'll see that as weakness. Who cares what he sees? Us. Victoria looked at Ethan and he saw something fierce flash in her eyes. I care. I spent the entire day standing my ground. I'm not running now. Okay? You don't have to stay. I know. They sat there waiting. Ethan could see the moment Damien spotted Victoria. The man's expression didn't change, but something shifted. His shoulders straightened, his smile sharpened. He excused himself from his conversation and started walking toward their table. Victoria. Damien's voice was smooth, pleasant. What a surprise. Damien. He stood at the edge of their table, looking between them. His eyes settled on Ethan, cataloging the work clothes, the calloused hands, the obvious difference in class. I don't believe we've met, Damien said, extending his hand to Ethan. Damien Cross. Ethan stood and shook his hand. Damien's grip was firm, calculated. A test. Ethan Cole. Ethan and I are having dinner, Victoria said, voice cold. How nice. Damien smiled. I didn't realize you were seeing anyone, Victoria. After today, I imagined you'd want to be alone. Your imagination is frequently wrong. Is it? Damien's smile widened. Well, I'm glad you found company, though I have to say, Cole, is it? You seem like an unusual choice for someone like Victoria. No offense. Sweet. None taken, Ethan said evenly. What do you do? Construction. How wonderful. Manual labor. There's something so honest about it, don't you think? Working with your hands, building things. Very grounded. Very... Damien paused, as if searching for the right word. Real. Ethan heard the condescension underneath the compliment. He'd heard it his whole life from men like Damien, men who thought blue-collar work was noble, right up until they had to shake hands with someone who did it. I think that's enough, Damien, Victoria said. I'm just making conversation. Damien turned his attention back to her. After today's meeting, I wanted to check on you, make sure there were no hard feelings. Hard feelings. Victoria's laugh was cold. You tried to steal my company. I tried to save it. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. Yeah. Well, from where you're sitting, you can't see the bigger picture. You never could. That's your problem, Victoria. You're brilliant, but you're too emotional. Too attached to your ideals to see when you're hurting your own business. This conversation is over. Is it? Damien leaned forward, placing both hands on their table. Here's some advice, Victoria, free of charge. Stop pretending you can run a billion-dollar company with heart and conscience. Business doesn't work that way. The world doesn't work that way. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner... The lady asked you to leave. Ethan's voice was quiet, but carried weight. Damien straightened, looking at Ethan like he'd just noticed an insect. Excuse me? She told you the conversation was over. You should go. This is a private discussion. Not anymore. They stared at each other. Ethan didn't move, didn't blink. He'd spent 12 years on construction sites dealing with men who thought being loud and aggressive made them powerful. Damien Cross was just another bully in an expensive suit. How charming, Damien said finally. The white knight construction worker. Tell me, Cole, does Victoria know she's slumming, or is that part of the appeal? Agiti. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Several nearby tables went quiet. We're done here, Damien. Go back to celebrating whatever it is you think you accomplished today. But understand this. You didn't win. You embarrassed yourself in front of the entire board, and now everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are. And what kind of man am I? The kind who values power over people. The kind who'll destroy anything he can't control. The kind I should have cut loose years ago. Damien's pleasant expression cracked. Careful, Victoria. You're already on thin ice with the board. Keep making emotional decisions. Keep surrounding yourself with people beneath you, and they'll start questioning whether you're fit to lead. He glanced at Ethan. No offense, of course. Of course, Ethan said. Victoria grabbed her coat. I'm leaving. Ethan, thank you for dinner. I'm sorry you had to witness this. She started to walk past Damien, but he caught her wrist. Not hard, but firm. Possessive. Let me drive you home, Damien said. We should talk about today. Really talk. Somewhere private. Take your hand off me. Victoria. Now. Ethan moved without thinking. He stepped between them, gently but firmly breaking Damien's grip on Victoria's wrist. Up close, Damien smelled like expensive cologne and entitlement. She said, let go, Ethan said quietly. Damien looked at Ethan's hand on his arm, then at Ethan's face. For a moment, something dangerous flashed in his eyes. You're making a mistake, Damien said, voice low. Wouldn't be my first. They stood there, three people locked in a moment that could go any direction. The restaurant had gone almost silent, everyone watching. Finally, Damien stepped back, smoothing his suit jacket. Enjoy your evening, he said. Then, to Victoria. When this falls apart, and it will, don't come crawling back asking for my help. He walked away. Didn't look back. Within seconds, the restaurant noise resumed, conversations picking up as if nothing had happened. Victoria stood frozen, her face white. You okay? Ethan asked. I should go. Let me walk you out. You don't have to. I know, come on. They walked through the restaurant together. Ethan left cash on the table for the coffee, probably too much, but he didn't care. Outside, the February wind had picked up, cutting through the streets like a knife. Victoria's car was waiting, a black sedan with a driver. Of course she had a driver. Thank you, she said, not looking at him. For tonight, for everything. He's wrong about you, Ethan said. How would you know? Because I spent 2 hours watching you. You're not emotional. You're just human. There's a difference. Victoria finally looked at him. In the streetlight, her eyes were definitely gray. No one stands up to Damien Cross, she said quietly. People who try usually regret it. Good thing I don't have much to lose. Everyone has something to lose. She opened the car door, then paused. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you help me tonight, really? You don't know me. You have your own problems. Why get involved? Ethan thought about that. About his son at home, about the layoffs coming Monday, about the empty chair across from him every morning where his wife used to sit. Because someone should, he said finally. And I was there. Victoria nodded slowly. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. If Damien retaliates, and he will, call me, please. Ethan took the card. Victoria Hale, CEO, Hale Development Group, a phone number, an email address. I'll be fine, Sissem, he said. Just keep it, please. Okay. She got into the car, and Ethan watched it pull away into traffic. Then he stood there on the sidewalk, holding a business card from a billionaire CEO, wondering what the hell he'd just gotten himself into. His phone buzzed. His son again. You okay? It's late. Ethan typed back. On my way home now. Everything's fine. Another lie. But maybe a necessary one. He walked to the subway, descended into the underground, and let the city swallow him whole. Above him, in offices and apartments and boardrooms, people like Damien Cross moved through the world taking whatever they wanted. And people like Victoria Hale tried to be better than that. Ethan didn't know which one would win. But for the first time in a long time, he thought maybe it mattered. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the radiator clank and the neighbors argue through the thin walls. Victoria Hale's business card sat on his nightstand, white and crisp against the scratched wood. He kept thinking about the look on her face when Damien Cross had grabbed her wrist, like she'd expected it, like it had happened before. At 6 in the morning, Andrew knocked on his door. "Dad, you awake?" "Yeah, buddy, come in." His son pushed open the door, already dressed for the day in jeans and a science club t-shirt that was getting too small. 12 years old and growing too fast. Every time Ethan looked at him, he saw Sarah, the same dark eyes, the same stubborn chin. "You were out late last night," Andrew said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Had some things to think about, like the layoffs?" Ethan sat up. "Who told you about that?" But "Nobody. But you've been weird all week, quiet. And yesterday morning I heard you on the phone with Uncle Gary." He sounded worried. Andrew picked at a thread on Ethan's comforter. "Are we going to be okay?" There it was. The question Ethan had been dreading. "Yeah," Ethan said, trying to sound more certain than he felt. "We're going to be okay." "You're lying." "Andrew, Mom used to do the same thing when she was sick. She'd smile and say everything was fine, but I could tell it wasn't." Andrew looked up and his eyes were too old for 12. "I'm not a kid anymore, Dad. You can tell me the truth." Ethan reached out and pulled his son close. Andrew was already almost as tall as he was. Another year, maybe 2, and he'd be looking Ethan in the eye. "All right, truth. Work's not going great. There might be layoffs Monday and I might be on that list. If that happens, money's going to be tight for a while. We'll have to cut back on some things." "Like what?" "Like pizza on weekends. Maybe cancel the streaming services. I might have to find a cheaper apartment." Andrew was quiet for a moment. "What about school? My science club dues are due next month." "We'll figure it out. I could get a job, help out." "You're 12. I could babysit or walk dogs or—" "Hey." Ethan held his son's face in his hands. "This is not your problem to fix. You hear me? You're the kid. I'm the dad. My job is to worry about money. Your job is to do your homework and pass your math test on Monday. But no buts. I mean it, Andrew. I've been working since I was 16. I know how to get through tough times. We'll be fine." Andrew nodded, but Ethan could see he didn't believe it. Smart kid. Too smart. They ate breakfast together, cereal and toast, the same thing they ate every morning. Andrew talked about his math test, about a girl in his class who might like him, about whether he should try out for the robotics team even though he wasn't good at building things. "You should try," Ethan said. "Worst they can do is say no." "What if I embarrass myself?" "Then you embarrass yourself. That's how you learn." Siki topagsiye. Did you embarrass yourself when you were my age? Utamo I Boston. Every single day. Ethan smiled. "Still do, actually. Last night I had dinner with a billionaire CEO and probably used the wrong fork for everything." Andrew's eyes widened. "You had dinner with a billionaire? Long story. Tell me." So Ethan told him. Not everything. He left out the parts about Damien Cross, about the tension and the threat of violence. But he told Andrew about meeting Victoria, about sharing a table, about 2 strangers finding something like friendship in the middle of a crowded restaurant. "Is she pretty?" Andrew asked. "What?" "The billionaire. Is she pretty?" That's not... Why does that matter?" "Because you're acting weird about it. You got all embarrassed." "I'm not embarrassed. You're blushing." "I don't blush. I'm 32 years old. I don't blush." Andrew grinned, and for a moment he looked exactly like Sarah. That same mischievous smile that meant she knew something you didn't want her to know. "You like her," Andrew said. "I met her once, for 2 hours." "So?" "Mom said she knew you were the one in 5 minutes." "Your mom was a lunatic." "Yeah, but she was right." "What?" Ethan threw a dish towel at his son. Andrew ducked, laughing, and the moment broke. But something had shifted between them. Some small piece of honesty had slipped through. "I gotta go," Andrew said, checking his phone. "Tyler's mom is driving us to the library to study. Be back by 3 and text me when you get there." I know. Dad? Yeah? I'm glad you met someone, even if it's just for dinner. You deserve to not be alone all the time. He grabbed his backpack and left before Ethan could respond. The apartment felt too quiet after he was gone. Ethan cleaned up breakfast, did laundry, fixed the leaking faucet in the bathroom that he'd been ignoring for 3 weeks. Normal Saturday things. Except nothing felt normal anymore. At noon, his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Mr. Cole? This is Victoria Hale. We met last night." Ethan's stomach flipped. "Yeah, hi. How'd you get my number?" "Yeah, say. You signed the check at the restaurant. I asked the manager for a copy of the receipt. I hope that's not too invasive." "Little bit, yeah. I apologize. But I wanted to call because..." She paused. "Is this a bad time?" "No, I'm just surprised. I'm calling to warn you. Damien made some calls this morning. He's angry about last night. And when Damien gets angry, he retaliates." Ethan sat down on his couch. "What kind of retaliation?" "Mo. Dish geet. I don't know yet, but he has connections throughout the construction industry in New York. Contractors, union leaders, city officials. He could make things difficult for you." "I'm already expecting to get laid off Monday. How much worse can it get?" "You'd be surprised." Victoria's voice was quiet. "I've watched him destroy people before. He's patient, methodical. He'll wait until you've forgotten about him, and then he'll strike." "Why are you telling me this, Latza?" "Because you stood up for me. And because I don't want you to get hurt because of me." Ethan looked at the business card still sitting on his nightstand. "I can take care of myself. I'm sure you can. But if anything happens, if you lose your job, if contracts suddenly dry up, if anyone mentions Damien's name, call me. Please." "Baishtam." "Why do you care?" The question came out harsher than he meant it. There was a long silence on the other end. "I don't know," Victoria said finally. "Maybe because nobody's done something kind for me in a long time without wanting something in return. Or maybe because you remind me that not everyone in this city is like Damien. I'm just a construction worker. You're more than that." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. "I should let you go," Victoria said, "but keep my card. And be careful." She hung up before he could respond. Ethan sat there holding his phone, trying to figure out what had just happened. A billionaire CEO was worried about him. A woman he'd known for 3 hours had tracked down his phone number to warn him about her psychotic ex-business partner. His life had officially gotten weird. The weekend passed slowly. Ethan took Andrew to the library, helped him study for his math test, made dinner, watched a movie neither of them really paid attention to. Sunday afternoon, they went to the park, threw a football around even though Andrew was terrible at sports, and Ethan's shoulder ached from a week of heavy lifting. "You're distracted," Andrew said, throwing the ball back. "Sorry. Is it work?" "Yeah. Or the billionaire." Ethan caught the ball and held it. "Go long. Up. Andrew ran and Ethan threw the ball high and long. Andrew missed the catch by about 6 feet, but he laughed anyway. They played until the sun started setting and the February cold became too much to ignore. That night, Ethan lay in bed trying not to think about Monday morning, trying not to calculate how many weeks they could survive on his savings, trying not to see Andrew's face when he'd asked about school and science club and whether they'd have to move. He didn't sleep much. Monday morning came too fast. Ethan got to the construction site at 6:30, same as always. The crew was already gathering, drinking coffee from thermoses, talking about weekend games and family drama, and everything except the layoffs everyone knew were coming. Gary, the foreman, stood near the gate, looking like he'd aged 10 years over the weekend. "Morning, Gary," Ethan said. "Ethan, we need to talk." "Oh." Here it was. Ethan set down his lunch bag and followed Gary to the construction trailer. Inside, 2 men in suits sat at the folding table, HR people, from the main office. Ethan had never seen them on site before. That wasn't a good sign. "Mr. Cole," the older one said. "Please sit down." Ethan sat. Gary stood by the door looking miserable. "We're making some changes to the crew structure," the HR man continued. "Budget constraints. Unfortunately, we have to let some people go, and your position has been identified for termination effective immediately." 12 years, Ethan said quietly. "I've worked for this company for 12 years. We appreciate your service. You'll receive 2 weeks severance and your remaining PTO will be paid out. You can pick up your final check on Friday. 2 weeks severance for 12 years. Company policy, Mr. Cole. I'm sorry, but the decision is final." Gary cleared his throat. "Ethan's one of our best workers. His safety record is perfect. The crew respects him. If we have to make cuts, there are guys with less seniority. The decision is made." The HR man didn't even look at Gary. "Mr. Cole, we'll need your hard hat and site badge. Yikam." Ati Ichi. Ethan stood slowly. He unclipped his badge from his belt and set it on the table, took off his hard hat and placed it next to the badge. 12 years of his life reduced to 2 pieces of plastic and metal. "That's it?" he asked. "That's it. Thank you for your service." Ethan looked at Gary. "Did you know?" "Friday afternoon. They called me after everyone left." "And you didn't tell me." "I couldn't. They made me sign. I'm sorry, Ethan. I really am." Ethan nodded. He couldn't even be angry. Gary was just following orders, protecting his own job. That's how it worked. That's how it always worked. He walked out of the trailer into the cold morning air. The crew was standing by the gate, watching. They'd seen the HR guys go in. They knew what it meant. Miguel stepped forward. "Ethan, you okay?" "Yeah, just got laid off." "Shit, man, I'm sorry." "Not your fault." Ethan grabbed his lunch bag. "Take care of yourself, Mig, and watch your back. If they're cutting me, they're cutting everybody eventually." He walked to the gate. Behind him, he could hear the crew talking in low voices. "Ethan Cole got laid off. 12 years and they just tossed him. None of us are safe." Ethan didn't look back. He took the subway home in a daze. It was barely 8 in the morning. Andrew would still be at school. The apartment would be empty. Ethan would sit there and figure out how to tell his son that everything just got worse. But when he got to his building, there was a black sedan parked in front. The same one from Friday night, Victoria's car. She was standing on the sidewalk, looking out of place in her business clothes and expensive coat. When she saw Ethan, she walked toward him. "How did you know?" Ethan asked. "I have people who track these things. When I heard about layoffs at Collins Construction this morning, I checked the list." Victoria looked at him carefully. "I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. You didn't do this." "Didn't I? You stood up to Damien because of me. Now you've lost your job." "I was already on the chopping block." "Maybe. But Damien made calls this weekend. I know he did. He always does." Ethan shook his head. "What are you doing here, Victoria?" "I have a proposition. I don't need your charity." "It's not charity. It's business." Victoria pulled out a folder from her car. "I have a development project breaking ground in 3 weeks. Residential tower in Queens, 40 stories, mixed income housing. I need a site supervisor with your experience." Ethan stared at her. "You're offering me a job." "I'm offering you an opportunity to prove yourself. The pay is better than Collins. The benefits are better. And I guarantee you, nobody on my project will be laid off for budget reasons unless the entire project fails." She held out the folder. "Take a look. If you're interested, call my office tomorrow." "I can't take this." "Why not?" "Because it feels like, I don't know, like I'm using you. You stood up for me when I needed help. Let me return the favor." "Yes, this is more than a favor. This is business," Victoria said firmly. "I need good people. You need work. That's all this is." They stood there on the sidewalk, traffic rushing past, people walking around them without a glance. Ethan thought about his son, about the bills stacking up, about pride and dignity and what any of that meant when you couldn't feed your kid. He took the folder. "I'll look at it," he said. "Good. There's also—" Victoria hesitated. "This Friday, my company is hosting a fundraiser. Gala at the Plaza Hotel. Donors, investors, board members. Damien will be there. He's still technically on the board until we finalize his removal. Sounds fun. It's torture, but I'd like you to come as my guest. Ethan almost laughed. You want me at a gala? I don't even own a suit. I'll have one sent over. Please, Ethan. I know it's a lot to ask, but why do you want me there? Okay. Victoria looked away. Because Damien will be watching me all night, looking for weakness. And I'd like to show him that I'm not afraid. That I have people who... She stopped. That I'm not alone. You want me there to make him angry. I want you there because I trust you. That's incredibly rare in my world. Ethan looked down at the folder in his hands. A job offer. A gala invitation. This woman he barely knew was pulling him into her world, and he didn't know if that was brave or stupid. All right, he said. I'll come. Thank you. Victoria got back into her car, but before she closed the door, she looked at him one more time. He's dangerous, Ethan. I need you to know that. Damien doesn't just destroy careers, he destroys lives. If you're having second thoughts, I'm not. She nodded and closed the door. The car pulled away, and Ethan stood there holding a job offer from a billionaire and wondering what the hell he'd just agreed to. Inside his apartment, he opened the folder. The contract was detailed, professional, offering him nearly double what Collins had paid. The job description matched his experience perfectly. Everything looked legitimate. At the bottom of the folder was a note in handwriting. Call me if you have questions. And thank you for Friday night. You have no idea what that meant to me. Ethan set the folder on his kitchen table and called his son. Hey, Dad, Andrew answered. Aren't you at work? Got laid off this morning. Silence. Then, are you okay? Yeah, buddy. I'm fine. Actually, I might have another job lined up already. Really? That was fast. It's complicated, but we're going to be okay. I promise. Dad? Yeah? You don't have to promise me things are going to be okay. I know you're trying. That's enough. Ethan's throat tightened. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart. You just never notice because you're old. I'm 32. Like I said, old. Ethan laughed, and it felt good. Real. I love you, kid. Love you too, Dad. They hung up, and Ethan sat at his kitchen table looking at Victoria's job offer. He should call her, thank her, accept the position before she changed her mind. Instead, he pulled out his laptop and searched for Damien Cross. The results filled his screen. Damien Cross, real estate investor. Damien Cross, venture capitalist. Damien Cross photographed at charity events, business conferences, political fundraisers. Always smiling, always surrounded by powerful people. Ethan found an article from 3 years ago. Business partner accuses Damien Cross of contract fraud. He clicked through. The lawsuit had been settled out of court. The business partner had vanished from public record after that. Another article. Former employee files harassment complaint against Cross Enterprises. Also settled, also buried. There were more. A pattern of accusations, settlements, people who'd challenged Damien Cross and disappeared. Not literally, but their careers ended, their reputations destroyed, their lives quietly dismantled. Victoria was right. Damien was dangerous. And Ethan had just agreed to walk into a room full of his allies wearing a borrowed suit. The rest of the week moved in a blur. Ethan accepted Victoria's job offer, spent 2 days reviewing blueprints and project timelines, met with Victoria's construction team and realized they were all top-tier professionals who probably thought he was in way over his head. Maybe he was. Thursday afternoon, a suit arrived at his apartment. Custom-tailored, perfect fit, probably cost more than his monthly rent. There was another note from Victoria. See you tomorrow night. Don't be nervous. You'll do fine. Friday evening, Ethan stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the 10th time. Andrew sat on the closed toilet lid, watching. You look good, Dad. I look like I'm playing dress-up. No, you look like James Bond. If James Bond was a construction worker, that's not encouraging. It should be. James Bond is cool. Ethan turned to face his son. You sure you're okay staying at Tyler's tonight? Yeah, his mom already ordered pizza. We're going to watch movies and probably stay up too late. Andrew grinned. You're the one who should be nervous. I'm not nervous. You've adjusted your tie 16 times in the last 10 minutes. You counted? I got bored. Eat. The doorbell rang. Victoria's driver, right on time. Ethan grabbed his coat and hugged his son. Be good. Text me if you need anything. Have fun at your fancy party. Try not to punch anyone. That's the plan. Ethan rode to the Plaza Hotel in the back of Victoria's sedan, watching the city slide past the windows. Manhattan at night, all lights and motion and people living lives that looked nothing like his. The plaza was everything he expected, massive, ornate, intimidating. People in evening gowns and tuxedos climbed the steps, handed their coats to attendants, disappeared into golden ballrooms. Ethan felt like an imposter. Victoria was waiting in the lobby. She wore a dark blue dress that made her look like she belonged in a museum. Her hair was down, soft around her shoulders. When she saw Ethan, she smiled. You came. You sound surprised. I thought you might change your mind. Almost did. Then I remembered I don't have many friends who own hotels. I don't own this one. I just rent it occasionally. She looked him over. The suit fits perfectly. Should, considering what it probably cost. Don't worry about that. Come on, let's get this over with. They walked into the ballroom together, and every head turned. Ethan could feel people staring, calculating, wondering who the hell he was and why Victoria Hale had brought him. Somewhere in the crowd, he knew Damien Cross was watching. Ignore them, Victoria said quietly, her hand resting lightly on his arm. They always stare. It's what they do. This is your world. This is my prison. But let's pretend it's tolerable for one night. They moved through the crowd. Victoria introduced him to board members, investors, city officials. Ethan shook hands and smiled and tried not to think about how much money was in this room. How many people here could buy and sell his entire life without blinking? And then he saw Damien. He stood near the bar, surrounded by men in expensive suits. When their eyes met, Damien smiled, raised his glass in a mock toast. Then he started walking toward them. He's coming over, Ethan said. I know, stay close. Damien stopped in front of them, still smiling that cold smile. Victoria, what a beautiful dress. And Mr. Cole, how unexpected. He looked Ethan up and down. I heard you lost your job this week. Such unfortunate timing. I found a new one, Ethan said. Oh? Where? Hale Development Group. Damien's smile widened. How convenient. Victoria, are you hiring strays now? Is that your new business model? Careful, Damien, Victoria said softly. We're in public. So we are. Then again, you've never been concerned with appearances. That's always been your weakness. You make decisions with your heart instead of your head. He leaned closer, like hiring your dinner companion to work on a billion-dollar project. What will the board think when they find out? The board approved all my hiring decisions. Did they approve this one specifically, or did you sneak him in under the radar? Victoria didn't answer. Damien laughed. That's what I thought. You know, Victoria, I warned them you were too emotional to run this company. Now you're proving me right. You met this man once, and you're already giving him positions he's not qualified for. It's embarrassing. I'm qualified, Ethan said. Are you? Damien turned to him. Tell me, Cole, how many 40-story projects have you supervised? None. How many billion-dollar budgets have you managed? None. How many board meetings have you sat through? How many investor presentations have you given? How many? That's enough, Victoria cut in. Is it? Because I think the board should know exactly who you're bringing onto our flagship project. I think they should know you're making hiring decisions based on personal feelings instead of professional competence. Damien's voice carried through the room now. People were listening. Damien's voice. I think they should know you're risking everything we've built because you can't separate business from whatever this is. He gestured between Ethan and Victoria with disgust. We're done here, Victoria said. No, Victoria, we're just getting started. Damien walked away, and Ethan could feel the room watching, judging, calculating how this would play out. I should leave, Ethan said quietly. Don't. He's right. I don't belong here, and I'm making things worse for you. Victoria grabbed his hand. Please, don't let him win. They stood there, two people from different worlds, holding hands in a ballroom full of sharks. And Ethan realized that Victoria wasn't asking him to stay for her company or her reputation. She was asking him to stay because she didn't want to face this alone. "All right," Ethan said. "I'll stay." They made it through dinner, made it through speeches and toasts and endless networking. Ethan watched Victoria work the room with practiced ease, smiling and charming and pretending Damien's words hadn't cut deep, but he could see the exhaustion underneath. The way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. The way she gripped her wine glass too tight. Near midnight, they escaped to a balcony overlooking Central Park. The February air was cold enough to hurt, but after hours in that suffocating ballroom, it felt good. "Thank you for staying," Victoria said. "Thank you for the job." "You earned it. Despite what Damien thinks, I don't hire people out of charity." "Then why did you hire me?" Victoria leaned against the railing. "Because when I watched you work through those blueprints, I saw someone who cares. Someone who understands that buildings aren't just investments. They're homes, lives, communities. That's rare in this industry. Damien's going to come after me now. You know that. I know. And you're okay with that?" Tossad. "No, but I'm not okay with letting him intimidate me either." Victoria turned to face him. "This project in Queens, it's everything I've been working toward. Affordable housing mixed with market rate, community spaces, local hiring. It's supposed to prove that development doesn't have to destroy neighborhoods to be profitable." "Sounds idealistic." "It is, but idealism is all I have left. If I let Damien and the board turn it into another luxury tower for wealthy people, then what's the point?" Ethan understood. He'd spent 12 years building homes for people who'd never know his name. Maybe that's all anyone could do, build something good, and hope it mattered. "We should go back inside," Victoria said. "But people will talk if we're gone too long." "Let them talk." She smiled at that, a real smile. "You're very different from anyone in my world, Ethan Cole. Good different or bad different?" "I haven't decided yet." They went back inside to find the gala winding down. Damien was gone. Most of the guests were leaving. Victoria said goodnight to board members and donors, playing her role perfectly. But when they walked out to her car, she grabbed Ethan's arm. "He's going to destroy you," she said quietly. "You understand that, don't you? Damien won't stop until you're completely ruined." "Then I guess I better be ready." "How can you be so calm?" "Because I've already lost everything that mattered. My wife, my savings, my job. What's Damien going to take that I haven't already lost?" Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "Your son, your future, your hope." Ethan didn't have an answer for that. They drove in silence back to his apartment. When the car stopped, Victoria touched his hand. "If you want to walk away from the job, I'll understand. No hard feelings. I can pay you for... I'm not walking away, but even knowing what Damien will do, especially knowing that." Victoria nodded slowly. "Then I'll see you Monday morning. Project meeting at 9. I'll be there." Ethan got out of the car and watched it drive away. Above him, the city stretched into darkness. Somewhere out there, Damien Cross was planning his next move. Somewhere out there, battles were being fought that Ethan didn't understand yet, but he'd faced worse. He'd watched his wife die. He'd raised a son alone. He'd survived. He could survive this, too. Inside his apartment, Ethan changed out of the expensive suit and into his regular clothes. Checked his phone. Andrew had texted from Tyler's house. "Having fun. Hope your party wasn't too boring. Love you, Dad." Ethan texted back, "Love you too. See you tomorrow." He lay in bed exhausted but unable to sleep. On Monday, he'd start a new job. On Monday, he'd walk into Victoria's world for real. On Monday, everything would change. But tonight, he was just Ethan Cole, a construction worker, a single father, a man who'd said yes to something dangerous because someone had asked him to be brave. He closed his eyes and tried not to think about what came next. Monday morning arrived with rain that turned the city gray and cold. Ethan stood outside the Hale Development Group headquarters at 8:45, staring up at the glass tower that reflected nothing but clouds. 23 floors of steel and ambition. He'd built structures like this his entire career, but he'd never worked inside one. The lobby was all marble and modern art that probably cost more than his yearly salary. A security guard checked his ID, made a call, then directed him to the elevators. 19th floor. As for Jennifer, at reception. Ethan rode up with 3 people in expensive suits who didn't look at him once. He was invisible to them. Just another worker passing through their world. Jennifer turned out to be a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She handed him a badge, a folder of paperwork, and a tablet. Ms. Hale is in the conference room. You're late. It's 8:52. The meeting starts at 9. Early is on time. On time is late. You'll learn. She pointed down a hallway. 3rd door on your left. And Mr. Cole, don't embarrass her. Ethan found the conference room filled with people already seated around a long table. Victoria sat at the head, looking every bit the CEO in a gray suit that probably cost more than his first car. She glanced up when he entered. Ethan, good. Everyone, this is Ethan Cole, our new site supervisor for the Queen's project. Ethan, this is the team. She just sit. She went around the table. Marcus, the project manager. Lisa, the lead architect. David, the structural engineer. 3 other people whose names and titles blurred together. They all looked at Ethan with varying degrees of skepticism. Ethan sat in the only empty chair, next to a guy about his age who stuck out his hand. James Chen, structural review. You're the one who replaced Greg, right? I don't know who Greg is. Was. Greg was the last site supervisor. Quit after 3 weeks. Said the project was too complicated. James grinned. Welcome to hell. Thanks. Victoria stood and pressed a button on the wall. A screen lowered behind her displaying architectural renderings of a massive tower. 40 stories, just like she'd said. But the drawings showed something unusual. The bottom 15 floors looked different from the top. Mixed materials. Different window patterns. This is the Queensbridge Tower, Victoria began. Our flagship project and the first of its kind in New York. Floors 1 through 15 are affordable housing units, priced at or below market rate for low and middle income families. Floors 16 through 40 are market rate condos that will fund the affordable units below. The building also includes 3 floors of community space, daycare, health clinic, job training center. Marcus, the project manager, cleared his throat. We've already discussed the financial risk of this model, Victoria. If the market rate units don't sell, they'll sell, Victoria said firmly. We've done the market analysis. The location is prime, the design is innovative, and buyers want to feel good about their purchase. Knowing their investment helps fund affordable housing is a selling point, not a liability. You're betting the entire company on that assumption, David the engineer said. If you're wrong, I'm not wrong. Lisa the architect jumped in. The structural challenges alone are significant. We're essentially building 2 different towers in one. Different weight loads, different mechanical systems, different safety requirements. Add in the community space, and it's a logistical nightmare. That's why I hired the best team in the city. Victoria looked directly at Ethan. And that includes our site supervisor, who has 15 years of experience building complex structures on impossible timelines. Ethan felt everyone's eyes on him. 12 years, actually. Your resume said 15. I rounded up. Oh, dead silence. Then James started laughing, and the tension broke slightly. At least he's honest, James said. That's more than we can say for most people in this industry. The meeting continued for 2 hours. They went through timelines, budgets, contractor bids, material suppliers. Ethan mostly listened, trying to absorb everything. This was different from anything he'd done before. The scale was massive, the stakes were higher, and everyone in the room knew more about development than he did. But when they got to the construction sequence, Ethan finally spoke up. You've got the foundation pour scheduled for March 15th, he said, looking at the timeline. But you're planning to have mechanical rough-ins complete by April 1st. That's not enough time. Marcus frowned. The contractors assured us the contractors are lying, or they don't know what they're doing. Foundation pour takes at least a week to cure properly in March weather. Add another week for inspections and weather delays. You need at least 3 weeks minimum before you can start mechanical work, and that's being optimistic. We don't have 3 weeks, Marcus said. The whole schedule cascades from that date. Then the schedule is wrong. Scott. Mr. Cole, with respect, we've been planning this project for 18 months. I think we know. Do you know how concrete cures in cold weather? Do you know what happens if you rush mechanical systems into a foundation that hasn't settled? Do you know how many code violations you'll rack up before you even reach floor 5? Marcus's face flushed. I don't appreciate. Ethan's right. Victoria cut through the tension cleanly. We adjust the timeline, push everything back 3 weeks. That puts us behind schedule before we even break ground, Marcus protested. Better behind schedule than building on a faulty foundation. Make the changes. Victoria looked at Ethan. What else? Ethan went through the plans page by page, pointing out problems. Wrong material specs, unrealistic labor estimates, contractor bids that were too good to be true. With each issue, he could feel the room turning against him. These people had spent months on this project, and here he was tearing it apart on day 1. But Victoria listened to every word, took notes, asked questions. When the meeting finally ended 3 hours later, half the team looked furious. Marcus stopped Ethan in the hallway. You just made yourself a lot of enemies in there. I'm not here to make friends. Good, because you won't. Marcus walked away. James caught up with Ethan at the elevator. That was either really brave or really stupid. I can't decide which. Probably both. Well, you're not wrong about the timeline. I tried telling them the same thing 2 months ago. Nobody listened. They listened when Victoria told them. Yeah, because she signs the checks. Speaking of which, James lowered his voice. There's a rumor going around that you and Victoria have some kind of personal connection. That true? We met once before I got hired, shared a table at a restaurant. That's it? That's it. Because people are saying Damian Cross is telling anyone who'll listen that you're Victoria's boyfriend, that she hired you as a favor, that you're unqualified and dangerous. Ethan stepped into the elevator. People can say whatever they want. Yeah, but in this industry, rumors become facts pretty fast. And Damian has a lot of friends. The elevator doors closed before Ethan could respond. He rode down alone, watching the floor numbers descend, thinking about what James had said. Damian was already working, already spreading poison. Outside, the rain had gotten worse. Ethan walked to the subway with his collar up against the wind, checking his phone. 3 missed calls from Andrew's school. His stomach dropped. He called back immediately. This is Ethan Cole. I had some missed calls? Mr. Cole, this is Principal Morrison. Andrew got into a fight during lunch. We need you to come pick him up. A fight? Andrew doesn't fight. Well, he did today. The other boy is fine, just a bloody nose. But school policy requires... I'm on my way. Ethan ran to the subway, his mind racing. Andrew had never been in a fight. Never. He was the kid who avoided conflict, who used words instead of fists, who'd rather walk away than throw a punch. Something was wrong. He made it to the school in 20 minutes. Found Andrew sitting in the principal's office with an ice pack on his right hand. His son looked up when Ethan walked in, and his eyes were red. Hey, buddy, Ethan said quietly. I'm sorry. Principal Morrison, a tired-looking woman in her 60s, gestured for Ethan to sit. Mr. Cole. Andrew struck another student, Marcus Webb, in the cafeteria. According to witnesses, Marcus was taunting Andrew about... She glanced at her notes. About his family situation. Andrew warned him to stop. Marcus continued. Andrew punched him. What exactly did Marcus say? Mr. Cole, that's not really... What did he say? The principal sighed. He called Andrew's mother a series of inappropriate names, and he made comments about your financial situation and employment status. Ethan looked at his son. Is that true? Andrew nodded, not meeting his eyes. How did Marcus know about my job? His dad works in construction. He heard something about you getting fired. He told Marcus. Andrew's voice cracked. He said Mom was probably glad she died so she didn't have to watch us become homeless. He said you were a loser who couldn't provide for his family. Ethan felt rage flash hot through his chest. He forced it down. And you hit him. I told him to stop. I told him 3 times. He wouldn't stop. Andrew, we don't solve problems with violence. You did. Andrew finally looked up, and his eyes were fierce. Last Friday at that restaurant, you stood up to that man who grabbed Victoria. You were ready to fight him if you had to. You protected her. That's different. How? Ethan didn't have a good answer for that. Principal Morrison cleared her throat. Andrew is suspended for 3 days. School policy on fighting is clear. Marcus is also suspended. They'll both return Thursday. Understood. Mr. Cole, Andrew is a good student. Good kid. This is completely out of character for him. If there's anything going on at home, we're fine, thank you. They walked to the car in silence. Andrew kept his head down, shoulders hunched against the rain. Ethan unlocked the doors and they got in, but he didn't start the engine. Just sat there, trying to figure out what to say. I'm sorry, Andrew said again. Stop apologizing. But I'd see. You defended yourself, and you defended your mother's memory. I'm not happy you hit someone, but I understand why you did it. Andrew looked at him, surprised. You're not mad. I'm furious, but not at you, at that kid, at his father for spreading rumors, at this whole situation. Ethan gripped the steering wheel. But you can't go around hitting people every time someone says something you don't like. Why not? It worked. He shut up real fast. Because that's not who you are. You're smarter than that, better than that. Mom wouldn't have thought so. Your mom would have been proud of you for standing up for yourself, and then she would have grounded you for 2 weeks. Ethan tried to smile. So I guess I have to ground you. That's what she'd want. I'm already suspended. That's basically grounded. Nice try. 2 weeks. No video games, no hanging out with Tyler, no phone except for emergencies. Andrew nodded. Fair enough. They drove home through the rain. Ethan made lunch, grilled cheese and tomato soup, comfort food that reminded both of them of Sarah. They ate at the kitchen table without talking much. Finally, Andrew said, Is it true? What Marcus's dad said? That you got fired because you helped some rich woman? It's complicated. That means yes. Ethan set down his spoon. I got laid off because the company was cutting costs. But yeah, helping Victoria probably didn't help. The man she used to work with, Damian Cross, he has a lot of influence. I think he made some calls. So I was right to hit Marcus. He was basically working for the guy who got you fired. That's not how it works. Sounds like it is. Ethan couldn't argue with that logic. His phone rang. Victoria. I need to take this, Ethan said, stepping into the living room. Yeah? Ethan, I just heard about what happened at the board meeting this morning. Marcus is furious. He called an emergency session for tomorrow to discuss your position on the project. I just told the truth about the timeline. I know. And you were right. But Marcus has been with this company for 8 years. He has allies on the board. And Damian is using this to push his narrative that I hired you for personal reasons instead of professional ones. Did you? Silence. Then, both. I hired you because you're qualified. But yes, I also wanted someone I could trust, someone who wouldn't be in Damian's pocket. You should have told me that up front. Would you have taken the job? I don't know. Maybe not. That's why I didn't tell you. Victoria's voice was strained. Look, the board meeting is tomorrow at 2. I need you there. I need you to defend your credentials and your decisions. I've never been to a board meeting. Neither had I until I became CEO. You'll figure it out. Just tell the truth. The truth is that I'm a construction worker who got hired by a woman I had dinner with once. That's not going to sound great. The truth is that you're a construction supervisor with 12 years of experience who identified critical flaws in our project timeline that could have cost us millions. That's what matters. Ethan rubbed his eyes. Victoria, maybe this was a mistake. Maybe Damian's right. Maybe I don't belong in your world. Do you want to quit? No. Then stop second-guessing yourself. I'll see you tomorrow at 2. Dress professionally. She hung up before he could argue. Andrew appeared in the doorway. Everything okay? Define okay. Is Victoria in trouble? We all are, probably. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed going over the project plans in his head, preparing for questions he didn't know how to answer. At 2 in the morning, he gave up and went to his laptop, researching board meetings, corporate governance, how to present technical information to non-technical audiences. He felt completely out of his depth. Tuesday morning, he dropped Andrew at home with instructions to study and not leave the apartment. Then he put on his one decent business suit, not the expensive one Victoria had sent, that felt wrong for today, and took the subway back to Hale Development Group. Jennifer at reception looked at him with something like pity. Conference room A, top floor. You're early. Learned my lesson yesterday. Good luck, Mr. Cole. You're going to need it. What, eh? The top floor was even more intimidating than the 19th. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Art that looked like it belonged in museums. And a conference room that could seat 30 people around a table that probably cost more than Ethan's entire apartment. Victoria was already there, talking quietly with an older man in a gray suit. She looked up when Ethan entered. Ethan, this is Robert Chen, our corporate attorney. Robert, Ethan Cole met. Robert shook his hand with a grip that felt like a warning. Mr. Cole, I've reviewed your employment contract and your credentials. Interesting career path. That's one word for it. Victoria speaks highly of your technical expertise. I hope that's accurate because you're about to be questioned by 12 board members who are looking for any reason to discredit you. Comforting, eat. I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to protect Victoria's interests, which, at the moment, include you. Robert sat down and opened a file. Here's what's going to happen. The board will question your qualifications, your hiring process, and your recommendations regarding the project timeline. Some will be hostile. All will be skeptical. Answer truthfully and concisely. Don't elaborate unless asked. Don't get defensive. And whatever you do, don't let them see you sweat. Too late for that. Victoria touched his arm. You'll be fine. Just remember, you know more about actually building structures than anyone in this room. Use that. The board members started arriving. 12 people in expensive suits, looking like they'd been born in boardrooms. Ethan recognized a few faces from the gala. They nodded to Victoria, ignored Ethan completely. Then Damien walked in. He was technically still on the board, Victoria had explained, until the formal removal process was complete, which meant he got to sit there and watch her defend hiring Ethan. Damien took a seat across from Victoria and smiled at Ethan. Mr. Cole, how wonderful to see you again. I didn't expect you to last a week. Meeting hasn't started yet, Damien, Victoria said coldly. Just making conversation. The board chair, a woman named Margaret Ross, called the meeting to order. She was 70 if she was a day, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. This emergency session was called by Marcus Hunt regarding personnel decisions on the Queensbridge project. Marcus, you have the floor. Marcus stood, looking uncomfortable. Thank you, Margaret. I want to address concerns about the recent hiring of Ethan Cole as site supervisor. Mr. Cole was hired without going through our standard vetting process. He was brought on by Ms. Hale directly, and in his first meeting, he contradicted project plans that took 18 months to develop. Those plans were flawed, Victoria said. That's your opinion. But Mr. Cole's criticisms have created delays and budget concerns. And there are questions about why he was hired in the first place. Damien leaned forward. If I may, Margaret, I think what Marcus is trying to say is that there appear to be personal considerations influencing Ms. Hale's professional decisions. Mr. Cole and Ms. Hale have a relationship that predates his employment. We met once, Victoria said sharply. We shared a table at a restaurant. That's all. And then you offered him a job. Quite generous for someone you barely know. I offered him a job because he's qualified. Is he? Damien pulled out a folder. Because I've done some research. Mr. Cole was just laid off from Collins Construction after 12 years. Before that, he worked for 3 other companies, none of them prestigious. His resume shows no experience supervising projects over 20 stories or managing budgets over $50 million. Yet you've put him in charge of $1 billion development. Experience isn't just about size, Victoria said. It's about competence, quality, integrity, all things Mr. Cole has demonstrated. In 3 days? Damien laughed. Victoria, even you have to admit this looks suspicious. You meet a man at dinner, he stands up to me on your behalf, and suddenly he's running your flagship project. It looks like you're rewarding personal loyalty instead of hiring based on merit. Margaret looked at Ethan. Mr. Cole, why don't you address these concerns directly? Ethan stood up, his heart pounding. 12 pairs of eyes locked on him. He thought about Andrew, about the fight at school, about standing up for what mattered even when you were outmatched. I'm not going to pretend I have the resume everyone in this room wants to see, he began. I haven't supervised 40-story buildings before. I haven't managed billion-dollar budgets, but I've spent 12 years actually building things, not designing them, not financing them, not presenting them to boards. Building them. With my hands. In the weather. With real crews and real problems and real consequences if we get it wrong. That's very touching, Damien said. But this project requires more than manual labor. I know. It requires understanding how buildings actually go together, how long concrete really takes to cure, how weather affects schedules, how contractors inflate bids and cut corners when nobody's watching. Your project timeline had a foundation pour scheduled with mechanical systems starting 2 weeks later. That's impossible. Any site supervisor worth his paycheck would have caught that. Our previous supervisor didn't mention any concerns, Marcus said. Then your previous supervisor was incompetent or lying. Probably both. Gasps around the table. You didn't insult people in board meetings. But Ethan was done pretending he belonged here. The truth is, I don't know corporate politics. I don't know how to play these games. But I know how to build. And I know your project was headed for disaster. Victoria hired me to fix that. If you don't like it, fire me. But don't pretend I'm not qualified just because I didn't go to the right schools or work for the right companies. He sat down. Silence filled the room. Margaret looked at Victoria. Ms. Hale, do you stand by your hiring decision? Completely. Us. Even knowing the optics are problematic? The optics don't matter if the building falls down. Point taken. Margaret looked around the table. Let me be clear. I don't care if Victoria met Mr. Cole at a restaurant, a construction site, or a strip club. What I care about is whether he can do the job. So here's what we're going to do. Mr. Cole, you have 90 days to prove yourself. If the project stays on schedule and on budget, you keep your job. If not, you're out. Fair enough? Ethan nodded. Fair enough. Good. Now let's move on to actual business. The meeting continued for another hour, but Ethan barely heard any of it. He'd just been given 3 months to prove himself to people who wanted him to fail. 3 months to build a 40-story tower while Damien Cross worked to destroy him. When the meeting finally ended, Damien stopped Ethan in the hallway. 90 days, Damien said pleasantly. That's all you have. And I'm going to spend every single one of them making sure you fail. Why? What did I do to you? You stood up to me. In public. Nobody does that without consequences. Damien stepped closer, his voice dropping. I'm going to destroy everything you have, Cole. Your job, your reputation, your ability to work in this city ever again. And when I'm done with you, Victoria will be next. She'll lose her company, her projects, everything she's built. And she'll blame you for it. You're sick. I'm successful. There's a difference. Damien walked away, leaving Ethan standing in the hallway feeling like he'd just been punched. Victoria found him there 5 minutes later. You did well in there. Did I? Because it feels like I just made everything worse. You told the truth. That's more than most people in that room are capable of. She touched his shoulder. Come on, let me buy you lunch. You look like you need a drink. It's 3 p.m. Your point? They went to a quiet restaurant near the office, sat in a back booth away from everyone else. Victoria ordered wine. Ethan got coffee, thinking about his son at home and the suspension and everything that had happened in the last 72 hours. Damien cornered me after the meeting, Ethan said. Told me he was going to destroy me. Of course he did. That's his specialty. He also said he was going to destroy you. Victoria sipped her wine. He's been trying to do that for 3 years. So far, he's failed. Why does he hate you so much? Because I rejected him. Not just professionally, personally. We were together once for about 6 months. He wanted to get married, merge our companies, build an empire. I wanted a partner, not a corporate acquisition. When I ended it, he took it as a personal insult. Men like Damien don't handle rejection well. So this is all because you broke up with him? It's because I refused to be controlled by him. That's the unforgivable sin. Victoria set down her glass. Look, I need to be honest with you about something. This isn't just about the Queensbridge project. It's about proving that my way of doing business can work. Ethical development, community investment, treating workers like human beings instead of line items on a budget. If this project fails, the board will use it as proof that I'm too idealistic. They'll push me out and bring in someone more like Damien. No pressure, then. I'm serious, Ethan. This matters. And I know I'm asking a lot from you. You're asking me to do my job. That's all. Build a building on time and on budget. I've done that 100 times. Not like this. Not with Damien working against us. Not with the entire board watching for any mistake. Then we don't make mistakes. Victoria smiled sadly. You really believe it's that simple? No, but I believe it's worth trying. They finished lunch and went back to the office. Ethan spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing contractor bids, finding inconsistencies and inflated numbers in almost everyone. When he finally left at 7, his head hurt and his eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets. At home, Andrew had actually done his homework. They ate dinner together, leftover pasta and garlic bread, and watched a nature documentary about octopuses. Normal things, small things, the kind of things that mattered more than boardrooms and billionaires. Dad? Andrew said during a commercial. Are you in over your head? Probably. Is Victoria worth it? Ethan thought about that. I think she's trying to do something good, build something that matters. That's worth fighting for. Even if you lose? Especially if I lose. Andrew nodded, like that made sense to him. Maybe it did. Maybe 12-year-olds understood honor better than adults. That night, Ethan lay in bed thinking about concrete and schedules and Damien Cross's threats. 90 days. He had 90 days to prove he belonged in Victoria's world. But what if he didn't belong? What if Damien was right, and Ethan was just a construction worker playing in a game he couldn't win? His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Thank you for today. I know it wasn't easy, but I meant what I said. You're exactly who I need for this project. Don't let Damien make you doubt that. Ethan stared at the message for a long time before responding. See you tomorrow. 3 words. But they meant he was still in, still fighting, still believing that maybe, somehow, they could win. Outside his window, the city hummed and glowed. Somewhere out there, Damien Cross was planning his next move. Somewhere out there, battles were being waged that Ethan still didn't fully understand. But tomorrow he'd show up. He'd do the work. He'd build something that mattered. That was all he knew how to do. That was enough. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of early mornings and late nights. Ethan threw himself into the Queensbridge project like his life depended on it, because maybe it did. He reviewed every contractor bid, walked the Queens site 3 times a week, caught problems before they became disasters. The foundation pour happened exactly when Ethan said it would, and the mechanical systems went in 3 weeks later, right on schedule. But Damien was working too. It started small. A supplier suddenly couldn't fulfill an order. A contractor backed out of a bid last minute. Nothing Ethan could prove was sabotage, but the pattern was clear. Someone with influence was making phone calls, applying pressure, creating problems that shouldn't exist. Ethan was in the site trailer on a Thursday morning in early April when James Chen burst through the door, his face pale. We have a problem. Ethan looked up from the structural drawings spread across his desk. What now? The steel shipment. It's not coming. What do you mean it's not coming? We have a contract. Contract got terminated this morning. The fabricator called, said they can't fulfill our order. Force majeure clause. Said their facility had an electrical fire last night and they're shutting down for repairs. Ethan stood up. That's convenient timing. Too convenient. Without that steel, we can't frame floors 16 through 25. We're dead in the water for at least 2 months while we find another supplier. 2 months puts us past our 90-day deadline. I know. Ethan grabbed his phone and called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. Tell me you heard about the steel, she said immediately. I heard. What do we know? The fabricator is owned by a company that does business with 3 of Damien's ventures. The fire was small, contained to 1 storage room, minimal damage. They could continue production if they wanted to. They don't want to. Because Damien told them not to. Can't prove that, but yes. Ethan paced the small trailer thinking, what about alternate suppliers? I've already made calls. Everyone's either booked solid or suddenly not interested in working with us. It's like we've been blacklisted. We have been blacklisted. Damien's using his connections to choke us out. Ethan stopped pacing. What if we go outside New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut? Already tried, same story. Word travels fast in this industry. James leaned against the desk. There's one option nobody's mentioned. We could use a smaller fabricator. Less capacity, probably more expensive, but they might be desperate enough for the business to say yes. You have someone in mind? Victoria asked through the phone. Yeah, small outfit in Jersey, run by a guy named Tommy Delgado. Does good work, but he's been struggling since his partner died. Might take the job just to keep his crew employed. Ethan looked at James. You trust him? With my life. Tommy taught me everything I know about structural steel. If he says he can do it, he can do it. Then call him, Victoria said. Now, Ethan, I need you back at the office. Emergency board meeting in 2 hours. Margaret wants an update on the project status. Damien's move. Of course it is. He'll use the steel delay to argue that you're not capable of handling the project. That I need to replace you before we fall further behind. He's not wrong. We are behind. Not if Tommy comes through. Get back here. We'll figure this out. Ethan drove into Manhattan through midday traffic, his mind working through contingencies. If Tommy couldn't help them, if the steel delay killed the timeline, he was done. Margaret had given him 90 days. He was on day 47. At the Hale Development office, the mood was tense. Victoria met him in her office, looking exhausted. She'd probably been up all night making calls trying to salvage the project. How bad is it? Ethan asked. Bad. The board is panicking. 3 members have already called asking if we should halt construction. Damien's been working them all morning, saying this proves the project is too ambitious, that we need to scale back or sell to another developer. He wants to buy the project. He wants to destroy it. If he can force me to sell, he'll convert the entire building to luxury condos and pocket the difference. Everything we've planned, the affordable housing, the community space, gone. Ethan sat down across from her. We're not going to let that happen. You sound very certain for someone whose project just lost its steel supply. Tommy will come through. You don't know that. No, but I believe it. And right now, that's what we have. Victoria studied him for a long moment. How do you do that? Stay calm when everything's falling apart? I've had practice. When my wife was dying, I learned that panic doesn't change anything. You just keep moving forward. Do the next thing, then the next thing. Eventually, you get through it. And if you don't get through it, then at least you went down fighting. Victoria's phone rang. She checked the screen. It's James. She put it on speaker. Talk to me, James. Tommy says yes. He can start fabricating steel in 2 weeks. It'll cost us 15% more than our original contract, but he guarantees delivery within 6 weeks of starting. That puts us back on schedule. Ethan felt tension he didn't know he was carrying released from his shoulders. Tell Tommy we'll take it. Send the contracts today. Already done. But Ethan, there's something else. Tommy asked me who we were replacing. When I told him about the fire and the cancellation, he said something weird. He said a guy came by his shop last week asking questions about his capacity and whether he'd be interested in large projects. What guy? Tommy didn't get a name, but the guy was well-dressed, expensive car, asked a lot of questions about Tommy's financial situation, almost like he was testing whether Tommy could be bought. Ethan looked at Victoria. Damien was setting up a backup plan. He knew we'd look for alternate suppliers. So he tried to compromise them before we could reach out, but Tommy said no. Tommy's a stubborn old bastard, James said through the phone. He doesn't like being manipulated. When I told him what was really happening, he got pissed, said nobody threatens his business and gets away with it. I like Tommy already, Victoria said. All right, we have steel. Now we just have to convince the board not to panic. The emergency meeting was as bad as Ethan expected. 12 board members, all looking at him like he was personally responsible for every problem on the project. Damien sat at the end of the table, wearing a smile that said he knew he was winning. Margaret called the meeting to order. Ms. Hale, I understand we've had a significant setback with the steel supply. Can you explain what happened? Victoria stood, projecting confidence Ethan wasn't sure she felt. Our steel fabricator experienced an equipment failure and had to cancel our contract. However, we've already secured an alternate supplier. Production begins in 2 weeks, delivery in 6 weeks. We'll be back on schedule. At what cost? One of the board members asked. 15% premium on the steel contract, roughly $800,000. Murmurs around the table. Damien leaned forward. $800,000 because Mr. Cole's supplier fell through. How is this acceptable? The original supplier didn't fall through due to any fault of ours, Victoria said. They experienced equipment failure. Convenient timing for an equipment failure, don't you think? Right when we're approaching Mr. Cole's 90-day review period. Damien looked at Ethan. Tell me, Mr. Cole. Damien looked. Do you have any personal connections to the original fabricator? Any reason they might want to help your position here? No. And yet here we are, $800,000 over budget because of a supplier you chose. I chose the lowest qualified bidder. That's standard practice. Standard practice that just cost us nearly $1 million. Damien turned to the board. This is exactly what I warned you about, mister. Cole doesn't have the experience to manage projects at this scale. He's making rookie mistakes that are costing us money and time. We need to cut our losses now before the problems get worse. Marcus spoke up. I have to agree with Damien. This delay is unacceptable. If we continue with Mr. Cole as supervisor, we're taking an enormous risk. But it also is right. Every construction project has setbacks, Victoria countered. What matters is how we respond. We found a solution in less than 24 hours. That's good project management. Or damage control after bad project management, Damien said. Margaret, I propose we vote to remove Mr. Cole and bring in someone with actual high-rise experience. Someone who won't cost us another $1 million when the next crisis hits. There won't be another crisis, Ethan said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. You seem very confident, Damien said. Care to explain why? Ethan stood up. He was done playing defense. You want to know why there won't be another crisis? Because I've spent the last 6 weeks learning every detail of this project, every supplier, every contractor, every potential weak point. I've reviewed contracts that the previous supervisor rubber-stamped. I've caught errors that would have cost millions if we'd broken ground without fixing them. The steel situation wasn't my fault. It was sabotage. But we fixed it, fast, because that's what good supervisors do. Sabotage, Damien repeated. That's quite an accusation. It's the truth. You've been making calls, applying pressure, trying to choke out this project since day one. Everyone in this room knows it. You're not trying to protect the company. You're trying to destroy it because you can't control it anymore. Careful, Mr. Cole. Slander is a serious offense. It's only slander if it's not true. Margaret held up her hand. Enough. Both of you. We're not here to air personal grievances. We're here to assess project viability. She looked at Victoria. The alternate supplier is confirmed? Yes. Contract signed this morning. And the timeline is still achievable? Yes. Then Mr. Cole stays for now. But I want weekly progress reports directly to my office. Any more surprises, any more budget overruns, and we revisit this decision. Clear? Clear, Victoria said. Damien's smile never wavered, but Ethan could see rage behind his eyes. He'd tried to end this, and he'd failed. Again. The meeting adjourned. Ethan was heading for the elevator when Damien caught his arm. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, Damien said, voice low enough that no one else could hear. Getting tired of your threats, Damien. Yeah, this wasn't a threat. This was a courtesy. Because what comes next isn't going to be professional. It's going to be personal. I'm done playing by the rules. He walked away before Ethan could respond. Victoria appeared at Ethan's side, watching Damien disappear around the corner. What did he say? That he's done playing by the rules. That's not good. No, it's not. They went back to Victoria's office. She poured them both coffee, and they sat in exhausted silence for a few minutes. Thank you for standing up in there, Victoria said finally. I know it's not easy. Nothing about this is easy. I'm sorry for dragging you into my war with Damien. You deserve better than this. Stop apologizing. I chose to be here. Ethan set down his coffee. But Victoria, we need to talk about what happens if he escalates. If he's done playing by professional rules, what's next? I don't know, but knowing Damien, it'll be calculated and vicious. Can you think of anything he could use against you? Anything in your past, your business history, your personal life? Victoria was quiet for a long time. There's something. It was 5 years ago when I was first building the company. I needed capital fast, and traditional lenders wouldn't take me seriously. So I took money from an offshore investor. The deal was legal, technically, but the paperwork was complex, deliberately complex. If someone wanted to make it look like money laundering, they could probably build a case. Jesus, Victoria. I was desperate and young and stupid. I paid back every cent with interest. The investor is gone. The company dissolved 3 years ago. But the records exist. If Damien found them and presented them the right way to the right people, he could destroy you. He could have me investigated. Even if I'm cleared, the damage to my reputation would be catastrophic. The board would force me out. The company would collapse. Ethan stood up, pacing. Does anyone else know about this? My lawyer at the time, but he died 2 years ago. His files went to his partner, but I don't know if... Victoria stopped. Oh no. What? His partner, Daniel Cross, Damien's cousin? You're kidding. I'm not. I didn't make the connection until just now because Daniel uses his middle name professionally. But if Damien has access to those files... Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered on speaker. Ms. Hale, this is Agent Rodriguez with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. We need to schedule a time for you to come in for questioning regarding some international transactions from 2019. Would tomorrow at 9 work for you? Victoria's face went white. What is this regarding? Oh, I see. We're investigating potential money laundering connected to an offshore entity called Crest Holdings. Your name appears in several documents. This is just preliminary questioning, but I'd advise you to bring your attorney. I'll be there. The agent hung up. Victoria sat frozen, staring at her phone. He did it, she whispered. Damien actually did it. Can they arrest you? They can investigate me. And even if I'm innocent, the investigation alone will destroy everything. The board will suspend me, projects will freeze, investors will pull out. By the time I'm cleared, there won't be anything left to clear my name for. Ethan sat down next to her. We'll fight this. Marcel. How? The FBI doesn't investigate unless they think they have something. Damien's given them enough to look suspicious, and once the media gets wind of it, she put her head in her hands. It's over. He won. No, he hasn't won. Not yet. Ethan, you don't understand. This isn't like the steel supplier. I can't just find an alternate solution. This is federal. This is my life. Then we prove the transactions were legal. We show them everything. Bank records, contracts, correspondence. We bury them in documentation until they see there's nothing criminal here. That could take months. I don't have months. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from James. Turn on the news. Channel 7. He pulled up the news on his phone. The headline made his stomach drop. Real estate CEO, Victoria Hale, under federal investigation for money laundering. The story was already out. Someone had leaked it to the press before the FBI had even interviewed her. Someone who wanted maximum damage. Victoria saw the headline and closed her eyes. It's over. Stop saying that. Why? It's true. Even if I'm innocent, I'm guilty in the court of public opinion. The board will have an emergency meeting tomorrow. They'll suspend me, appoint an interim CEO, probably someone Damien recommends. The Queensbridge project will be the first thing they cancel, and you'll be fired along with me. Then we have tonight and tomorrow morning. That's enough time to figure something out. Figure out what? How to fight the FBI and a smear campaign at the same time. Get a societe, mom separation, if that's what it takes. Victoria looked at him like he was crazy. Why are you still here? You should be running, getting as far from me as possible before this destroys your career too. Because running never fixed anything. Ethan stood up. Look, I don't know corporate law or federal investigations or how to spin this in the media, but I know how to solve problems. And I know that Damien made a mistake. What mistake? He moved too fast. He's so focused on destroying you that he got sloppy. There has to be a trail, phone calls, emails, something that connects him to this investigation. If we can prove he orchestrated it, that he's using the FBI as a weapon, then it doesn't matter what's in those old files. The investigation loses credibility. You're talking about investigating Damien Cross. He has lawyers, security, people who make problems disappear. So do you. Better ones, probably. Boca o I urunas. Victoria stood up, and Ethan could see her pulling herself together, the CEO emerging from underneath the fear. All right, she said. Call your friend Tommy. Tell him we need the steel delivered in 4 weeks instead of 6. Because if we're going down swinging. That's the spirit. And Ethan, thank you for not walking away. Nowhere else I'd rather be. That night, Ethan went home to find Andrew waiting up for him. It was past 11, way past his son's bedtime. Can't sleep? Ethan asked. Saw the news. About Victoria. Is she going to jail? No, she didn't do anything wrong. The news says she's being investigated for money laundering. The news says a lot of things. Doesn't make them true. Andrew was quiet for a moment. Are you going to lose your job? Maybe. Probably. But I knew that was a possibility when I took it. Was it worth it? Ethan thought about that. About Victoria standing up to Damien in that restaurant. About the Queensbridge project and what it could mean for families who needed affordable housing. About fighting for something that mattered even when the odds were impossible. Yeah, he said finally. It was worth it. Even if you lose? Especially if I lose? Andrew nodded. Mom would have liked her. Victoria, I mean. She would have liked that you're fighting for something. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Yeah, she would have. They sat together on the couch, not talking, just being there. Father and son. Facing whatever came next. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. My lawyer found something. Can you come by the office early tomorrow? 6 a.m. He texted back. I'll be there. Whatever she'd found, it was their shot. Maybe their only shot. And Ethan was going to take it. Because 47 days ago, a billionaire CEO had trusted him enough to offer him a job. And now he was going to do everything in his power to make sure that trust wasn't misplaced, even if it cost him everything. Friday morning came too fast. Ethan left Andrew sleeping and took the subway to Manhattan in the dark. The city was quiet at this hour. Just delivery trucks and early commuters, and people whose lives ran on schedules most people never saw. Victoria was already in her office when he arrived, along with Robert Chen and a woman Ethan didn't recognize. She was maybe 40, wearing glasses, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Ethan, this is Sarah Mitchell. She's a forensic accountant I hired to go through Damien's business dealings. Sarah, show him what you found. Sarah pulled up a spreadsheet on the conference room screen. 3 weeks ago, Damien Cross made a payment of $50,000 to a private investigation firm. That firm specializes in asset searches and document recovery. 2 weeks ago, the same firm billed him another $30,000 for archival research services. He was looking for the offshore investment documents, Ethan said. Correct. But here's where it gets interesting. 5 days ago, Damien had dinner with a man named Marcus Riley. Riley is a staff attorney at the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. He's not assigned to your case, Victoria, but he works in the same department. Victoria leaned forward. Can we prove they discussed my case? No. But the timing is suspicious. The FBI opened their investigation the day after that dinner, and Riley sent an email to Agent Rodriguez the morning of the dinner that said, and I quote, "Might have something interesting for you. Let's talk." How did you get FBI internal emails? Ethan asked. Sarah smiled. I have friends in low places. The point is, Damien orchestrated this investigation. He found the documents, he connected with someone inside the FBI, and he tipped them off. If we can prove he manipulated federal agents for personal gain, that's obstruction of justice. Can we prove it? Robert asked. Not yet, but I'm working on it. I've traced all of Damien's recent financial activity. If he paid anyone else, a witness, a source, anyone, To feed information to the FBI, there will be a money trail. Ethan looked at Victoria. How long will that take? Days, maybe weeks. We don't have weeks. The board meeting is today. They're going to suspend Victoria this afternoon. Then we need leverage, Robert said. Something big enough to make Damien back off before the board votes. They all sat in silence, thinking. Outside the windows, the sun was starting to rise over Manhattan, painting the buildings golden red. And then Ethan remembered something. The Queensbridge project, he said slowly. Damien wanted to buy it, to convert it to luxury condos. What if we let him think he's going to get it? I'm not selling my project to Damien Cross, Victoria said flatly. I'm not saying actually sell it. I'm saying make him think you might. Set up a meeting. Tell him you're willing to negotiate terms. Get him talking about his plans for the building. Why would he talk about that? Because he's arrogant and because he thinks he's already won. People like Damien love explaining how they beat you. Victoria looked at Robert. Could we record a meeting like that? New York is a one-party consent state for recording. If you're part of the conversation, you can legally record it without his knowledge. But what exactly are you hoping to get? Building code violations, Ethan said. When Damien pushed his alternative proposal during that board meeting back in February, I noticed something. His plan called for removing structural supports on the affordable housing floors to maximize unit sizes. That's not legal. The building would never pass inspection. But Damien has connections to inspectors. He could probably bribe his way through. If we can get him to admit that's his plan, we have him for conspiracy to commit fraud. Old sorts. That's a reach, Robert said. Maybe, but it's all we have. Victoria stood up, walked to the window, stared out at the city. When she turned back, her jaw was set. Set up the meeting. Tell Damien I want to talk terms. This afternoon, before the board meeting. Make it look like I'm desperate. You are desperate, Robert pointed out. Which makes it believable. Let's do it. Robert made the call right there, put it on speaker. Damien answered on the second ring. Robert, what a surprise. Damien, I'm calling on behalf of Victoria Hale. She'd like to meet this afternoon to discuss potential options regarding the Queensbridge project. Silence. Then, she wants to sell. She wants to explore all available options given current circumstances. Current circumstances being a federal investigation that's going to destroy her career and her company? Damien laughed. Tell her I'll meet her. 4 o'clock, my office. Come alone. No lawyers. Mr. Cross. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. Victoria nodded at Robert. She'll be there, Robert said, and hung up. Victoria looked at Ethan. You're coming with me. He said no lawyers. He'll definitely say no to me. Then you'll wait outside. But I'm not walking into that office alone. They spent the rest of the morning preparing. Sarah worked her forensic magic, digging deeper into Damien's finances. Robert drafted legal language that might trick Damien into admitting wrongdoing. Victoria practiced staying calm while discussing the project she'd spent 3 years planning. And Ethan tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. At 3:30, they drove to Damien's office building. 40 stories of glass and steel in the financial district. The kind of place where fortunes were made and destroyed before lunch. You have the recorder? Ethan asked. Victoria touched her jacket pocket. Right here, audio and video. It's running. If anything feels wrong, just leave. Don't try to tough it out. I've been dealing with Damien for 5 years. I know when he's dangerous. That's what worries me, shots. They took the elevator to the 40th floor. Damien's office took up the entire level. Corner views, mahogany furniture, art that probably belonged in museums. A receptionist led Victoria to his office while Ethan waited in the reception area, trying to look casual. Through the glass walls, he could see Damien stand to greet Victoria. All smiles, all charm, like he hadn't just tried to destroy her life. Ethan couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could see Victoria sit down, accept a glass of water, cross her legs like she was completely at ease. She was good at this, better than Ethan would have been. 20 minutes passed. 30. Ethan's leg bounced nervously. The receptionist kept glancing at him like he was about to cause trouble. At 45 minutes, Victoria stood up, shook Damien's hand, started walking toward the exit. Then Damien said something that made her stop. Ethan stood up, ready to move if she needed him, but Victoria just turned back, said something Ethan couldn't hear, and left. In the elevator, she wouldn't meet his eyes. "Did you get it?" Ethan asked. "I got it. And?" "And we have him." They listened to the recording 3 times in Robert's office. Each time, Damien's voice filled the room with the same casual arrogance, the same certainty that he'd already won. "The affordable housing floors are a waste of vertical real estate," Damien's recorded voice said. "First thing I'll do is gut floors 1 through 15. Remove the load-bearing walls, reconfigure the units. We can fit twice as many luxury apartments if we're not bound by those ridiculous affordable housing codes." "That would require major structural changes," Victoria's voice responded, carefully neutral. "The building wasn't designed for that kind of modification. Buildings can be designed for anything if you know the right people. I have an inspector who understands that sometimes regulations need to be interpreted creatively. Cost me $50,000 to keep him on retainer, but it's worth it. He'll sign off on whatever plans I submit. You're talking about bribing a city inspector." Bus. "I'm talking about consulting fees, perfectly legal if you structure it correctly." Victoria had kept him talking for another 10 minutes, getting him to detail exactly how he planned to circumvent building codes, which officials he had compromised, how much money he expected to make from converting the affordable units to luxury. By the time the recording ended, Damien had confessed to conspiracy, bribery, and fraud. "It's enough," Robert said. "We take this to the FBI. They'll have to investigate him instead of you." "What about the board meeting?" Ethan asked. "That's in 2 hours. We send this recording to every board member before they vote. Let them hear exactly who they're dealing with." Victoria shook her head. "Damien will claim the recording was edited, taken out of context, and half the board is already on his side. They'll use any excuse to dismiss it. Then what do you want to do, Wawach?" Victoria stood up, and Ethan saw something dangerous flash in her eyes. Something that reminded him why she'd survived this long in a world designed to destroy people like her. "I want to play it at the board meeting, in front of everyone. Let Damien explain himself publicly." "Victoria, that's risky," Robert warned. "If he has any leverage we don't know about." "He doesn't. We've checked everything. This is his last move, and it failed. Now it's my turn." The emergency board meeting was scheduled for 6 o'clock in the same conference room where Ethan had first defended himself 90 days ago. He walked in beside Victoria, carrying a tablet with the recording queued up, trying to project confidence he didn't entirely feel. All 12 board members were present. Damien sat in his usual spot, looking relaxed and pleased with himself. Why wouldn't he be? As far as he knew, Victoria was about to be suspended, the Queensbridge project was about to be cancelled, and he was about to win everything. Margaret called the meeting to order. "We're here to discuss Ms. Hale's position as CEO, given recent developments regarding the federal investigation. Before we vote, does anyone have anything to add?" "I do," Victoria said, standing. "I'd like to address the investigation and provide some context that I think the board needs to hear. The floor is yours." Victoria took the tablet from Ethan and connected it to the room's speakers. 3 days ago, the FBI contacted me regarding international transactions from 2019. I was surprised by this because those transactions were completely legal and properly documented. I was also surprised by the timing, right as the Queensbridge project reached a critical phase. So I asked myself, who benefits from me being investigated right now? Who gains if I'm suspended and the project is halted? She pressed play. Damien's voice filled the conference room, explaining in careful detail exactly how he planned to bribe inspectors and violate building codes. The board members listened in silence, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock to anger as the recording continued. When it ended, the silence was absolute. "That recording is inadmissible," Damien said, his voice tight. "It was obtained without my knowledge. In a private meeting. It's illegal." "Actually, it's not," Robert said. "New York is a one-party consent state. Ms. Hale was part of the conversation. She had every legal right to record it. It's been edited, taken out of context. We have the full recording, 37 minutes. Would you like us to play all of it?" Damien stood up, his face flushed. "This is entrapment. Victoria called that meeting specifically to trick me into saying something incriminating. I called that meeting because you told Robert I wanted to sell," Victoria said calmly. You're the one who started talking about your plans for the building. I just listened. You manipulative. Enough, Margaret cut in. Mr. Cross, sit down. Now. Damien sat, but Ethan could see rage radiating off him. Margaret looked at Victoria. You have evidence that Mr. Cross orchestrated the FBI investigation. We're building that case. But yes, he paid a private investigator to find old documents from 2019, then used his connections inside the FBI to launch an investigation. He's been using federal resources as a weapon in a personal vendetta. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth, and I can prove it. Margaret turned to Damien. Did you pay someone to investigate Ms. Hale's business history? I may have hired someone to conduct due diligence. That's not illegal. Well, and did you have dinner with Marcus Riley from the FBI Financial Crimes Unit 5 days ago? Damien's jaw tightened. I have dinner with a lot of people. Answer the question, Damien. Yes, I had dinner with Marcus. We're old friends. We talk about a lot of things, including Ms. Hale's supposed money laundering. Our conversations are private. Not anymore, they're not. Margaret looked around the table. I've heard enough. We need to vote on 2 items. First, whether to suspend Ms. Hale pending the FBI investigation. Second, whether to remove Mr. Cross from this board effective immediately for ethics violations. Let's start with Ms. Hale. The vote was swift, 11-1 in favor of keeping Victoria as CEO. Only Marcus Hunt voted against her, and even he looked uncomfortable doing it. Then came Damien's vote. It was unanimous. All 12 board members, even the ones who'd been in his pocket days ago, voted to remove him. Margaret looked at Damien. You're done here. Security will escort you from the building. You have 24 hours to collect your personal belongings. After that, you're not welcome on any Hale development property. Damien stood slowly. He looked at Victoria with pure hatred. This isn't over, he said quietly. You think you've won, but you don't know what I'm capable of. I know exactly what you're capable of, Victoria replied. That's why I recorded you. Security appeared in the doorway. 2 large men who looked like they'd been waiting for this moment. Damien straightened his jacket, gave the board one last contemptuous look, and walked out with as much dignity as he could salvage. Which wasn't much. After he was gone, Margaret turned to Victoria. That was impressive. Risky, but impressive. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have an FBI investigation to deal with, and the Queensbridge project is still behind schedule and over budget. You have work to do, Ms. Hale. I know. Then get to it. Meeting adjourned. The board filed out, leaving Ethan and Victoria alone in the conference room. They stood there for a moment, not quite believing what had just happened. We did it, Victoria said finally. We actually did it. You did it. That was all you. No, you're the one who figured out how to trap him. You're the one who stood by me when everyone else was ready to walk away. She turned to face him. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. You hired me. I just did my job. You did a lot more than that. They looked at each other, and for a moment Ethan saw something in her eyes that made his chest tighten. Something that wasn't just gratitude or professional respect. Something that reminded him he wasn't just a construction worker standing in a billionaire's conference room. He was a man, and she was a woman. And somewhere along the way, between the steel suppliers and the board meetings and the fights against Damien Cross, they'd stopped being strangers. We should celebrate, Victoria said quietly. Get dinner, somewhere that isn't the Hamilton. I should get home. Andrew's waiting. Bring him. I'd like to meet him properly, not just hear about him. Ethan thought about that, about his 12-year-old son meeting the woman who'd turned their lives upside down over the past 3 months, about what that might mean. All right, he said, let me call him. They went to a small Italian place in the village. Nothing fancy, but the food was good and the atmosphere was warm. Andrew showed up in his science club t-shirt, looking nervous and excited at the same time. Andrew, this is Victoria. Victoria, my son Andrew. Victoria shook Andrew's hand seriously. Your dad talks about you constantly. All good things, I promise. He talks about you too, Andrew said, mostly about how much trouble you've caused. Andrew, Ethan warned. What? You said she was complicated. Victoria laughed. I am complicated. Your dad's not wrong. They sat down and ordered. Andrew asked Victoria questions about building skyscrapers, about running a company, about whether being a CEO was as cool as it looked in movies. Victoria answered honestly, not talking down to him, treating him like someone whose opinions mattered. Ethan watched them talk and felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Dad says you're trying to build affordable housing, Andrew said. Why? Aren't you rich? Why do you care about poor people? Andrew, you can't just ask. No, it's fine. Victoria set down her fork. It's a fair question. I care because I was one of those poor people once. After my father died, my mom and I lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens. We could barely afford rent. We qualified for housing assistance, but there was a 2-year waiting list. So we stayed in that tiny apartment, and my mom worked 2 jobs, and I watched her destroy herself trying to keep us afloat. When I started making money, I promised myself I'd build the kind of housing we needed back then. Places where families could afford to live without sacrificing everything. Andrew nodded slowly. That's pretty cool. Thanks, I think so too. But what if you lose money on it? What if it doesn't work? Then at least I tried. Sometimes that's all you can do. Try and hope it's enough. After dinner, Ethan walked Andrew to the subway. His son was quiet, processing. I like her, Andrew said finally. She's smart, and she talks to me like I'm not stupid. You're not stupid. You're the smartest person I know. Do you like her? Like her? I don't know. Maybe. Mom would want you to be happy, you know. She told me that once, when she was sick. She said if something happened to her, you should find someone else. Someone who makes you laugh. Does Victoria make you laugh? Sometimes, when she's not making me want to pull my hair out. That's good. That means she's interesting. Andrew hugged him. Love you, Dad. Thanks for dinner. Love you too, kid. Ethan watched his son disappear down the subway steps, then walked back to the restaurant. Victoria was waiting outside, her coat pulled tight against the April wind. He's a great kid, she said. Yeah, he is. He looks like you. Same stubborn chin. That's his mother. Everything good about him is his mother. They started walking with no particular destination. Just 2 people who'd survived something together and weren't quite ready to say goodnight. The FBI dropped the investigation, Victoria said. Robert got the call an hour ago. Once they heard the recording and learned about Damien's manipulation, they closed the case. I'm clear. That's good news. It's better than good. It's everything. Without that investigation hanging over me, the board can't question my authority. The project can move forward. We can actually build something that matters. By sight? You mean you can build it? I'm just the guy who makes sure the concrete cures properly. Victoria stopped walking. Don't do that. Don't minimize what you did. You saved this project. You saved my company, and you did it without asking for anything in return. You're paying me a good salary. That's plenty. It's not about money. It's about... She stopped, frustrated. Why can't you just accept that you matter? That what you do matters? Because I've spent my whole life being invisible. You build things, and nobody remembers your name. That's just how it works. Well, I remember your name, and I won't forget what you did for me. They stood there on the sidewalk, and Ethan realized they were standing very close. Close enough that he could see the silver flecks in her gray eyes. Close enough that if he wanted to, he could... His phone rang. Andrew's ringtone. Ethan answered. Everything okay? Equals. Yeah, just, Dad, there's a guy at our door, says he's from the police, says he needs to talk to you. Ethan's blood ran cold. Don't open the door. I'm on my way. He hung up and looked at Victoria. I have to go. Something's wrong. I'll drive you. They ran to her car. The driver took them through the city faster than was probably legal, weaving through traffic while Ethan tried Andrew's phone 3 more times. No answer. When they pulled up to Ethan's building, there were 2 police cars parked outside. Ethan's stomach dropped. He ran inside, took the stairs 2 at a time, burst through his apartment door. Andrew was sitting on the couch between 2 police officers. He looked scared, but unharmed. Standing by the window was someone Ethan recognized from the building, Mrs. Chen from 4B, who looked uncomfortable. Mr. Cole, one of the officers said, we need to ask you some questions. Of About what? What's going on? We received a report that you've been neglecting your son, leaving him alone for extended periods, not providing adequate supervision. We're required to investigate all reports of child endangerment. That's insane. I don't neglect Andrew. Dad works a lot, Andrew said quickly, but he's home every night. He makes dinner. He helps with homework. He's not neglecting me. The report says you've been left alone overnight multiple times, the officer said. Is that true? Sometimes I stay at my friend's house. That's not the same thing. The officer looked at Ethan. Mr. Cole, do you have any idea who might have filed this report? Ethan knew exactly who filed it. Damien, one last strike on his way down. Yes, it's a false report filed by someone trying to hurt me professionally. My son is fine. He's fed, clothed, supervised. I have never endangered him. We still need to complete our investigation. That means speaking with your son privately, checking the apartment, interviewing teachers and neighbors. Mrs. Chen spoke up. Officer, I live across the hall. I see Mr. Cole and his son every day. He's a good father, the best father. This report is wrong. I appreciate that, ma'am, but we have protocols. The next 2 hours were a nightmare. The officers searched the apartment, finding nothing wrong because there was nothing wrong. They interviewed Andrew in his bedroom while Ethan waited outside feeling helpless. They asked Mrs. Chen and 2 other neighbors questions about Ethan's parenting. Finally, they came out of Andrew's room. Everything looks fine, Mr. Cole. Your son is clearly well cared for. We'll file a report saying the complaint was unsubstantiated. But I'd suggest being careful. Whoever filed this knows enough about your life to make specific allegations. They might try again. They won't get the chance. After the police left, Ethan sat on the couch with Andrew, holding him close. I'm sorry, Ethan said. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. It was Damien, wasn't it? The guy from the restaurant. What? Yeah, he really hates you. He really hates that he lost. Victoria was still there, standing by the door, looking stricken. This is my fault. I brought you into my world. And now, this isn't your fault, Ethan said firmly. This is Damien being a monster, but it's done. He's gone. He can't hurt us anymore. But even as he said it, Ethan wondered if that was true. Damien had lost his position on the board, but he still had money and connections and the kind of rage that didn't just disappear overnight. The next morning, Ethan woke up to his phone ringing. It was Robert Chen. Ethan, you need to see this. See what? Check the news. Any channel. What? Ethan turned on the TV. Every news station was covering the same story. Real estate developer Damien Cross arrested on bribery and conspiracy charges. The footage showed Damien being led out of his apartment building in handcuffs, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. He looked smaller than Ethan remembered, diminished. Ethan called Victoria. Did you see? Or I saw. Apparently Sarah's evidence was more conclusive than we thought. She found direct payments from Damien to the FBI staff attorney. Wire transfers, emails, everything. The FBI doesn't appreciate being manipulated. They moved fast. How long will he be in jail? Years, if the charges stick, and they will. Damien kept records of everything. He thought he was too smart to get caught. That was always his weakness, arrogance. Ethan sat down on his couch, trying to process it. It was over, really over. Damien was gone. The project was saved. Victoria was safe. They'd won. Over the next 6 months, the Queensbridge Tower rose floor by floor exactly on schedule. Tommy Delgado's steel arrived on time. The contractors did good work. The inspectors found no violations because there were no violations to find. Ethan showed up every day at dawn and stayed until the work was done. He walked the site, checked every detail, caught problems before they became disasters. And slowly, the rest of the team stopped seeing him as Victoria's charity case and started seeing him as someone who knew what he was doing. Marcus Hunt eventually apologized. I was wrong about you, Cole. You're good at this. Took you 6 months to figure that out? I'm a slow learner. Victoria came to the site every week, walking through the structure with her architect and her engineer, watching her vision become real. Sometimes she'd stand on an upper floor, looking out at the Queen's skyline, and Ethan could see tears in her eyes. You okay? He'd ask. Yeah. Just thinking about what this means. 40 floors, half of them affordable. Families who'll have a place to live without destroying themselves financially. It's real, Ethan. We actually did it, Mus. You did it. I just made sure the building didn't fall down. Stop underselling yourself. This is yours as much as it's mine. The building topped out in October. They had a ceremony where the last steel beam was raised, signed by everyone who worked on the project. Ethan watched the beam lift into the sky and thought about all the buildings he'd built over 15 years, all the structures that would outlive him. This was the first one he'd remember. Andrew came to the topping out ceremony, standing next to Victoria, both of them cheering when the beam locked into place. Afterward, they all went to dinner. Ethan, Andrew, Victoria, James Chen, Tommy Delgado, half of the crew. They ate pizza and drank beer and told construction stories that got more exaggerated with each telling. Your dad's a legend, Tommy told Andrew. He caught 15 different code violations before we'd even poured the foundation. Saved us millions in corrections. That's just Dad being Dad, Andrew said. He notices everything. Well, we're lucky he does. Victoria sat next to Ethan, close enough that their shoulders touched. You look happy. I am. This is good. Building something that matters. Being around people who care about their work. It's everything I wanted when I started in construction. What did you want back then, Bob? To build things that would last. To know that somewhere in this city, there's something with my name on it. Or maybe not my name, but my work, my effort. Something that says I was here. This building says that, every floor of it. Ethan looked at her, really looked, at the woman who'd walked into a restaurant 3 months ago looking destroyed and had somehow become the most important person in his life besides his son. Victoria, I need to tell you something. Okay, I'm not good at this. At relationships or feelings or any of that. I loved my wife, and when she died, I thought that was it. I'd had my chance at happiness, and I lost it. But then I met you, and everything got complicated. And somewhere between the board meetings and the steel suppliers and fighting Damien Cross, I started feeling things I didn't think I could feel anymore. Victoria didn't say anything, just waited. I don't know what this is, Ethan continued. We're from different worlds. You're a CEO, and I'm a construction supervisor. You live in penthouses, and I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with radiators that clank. But I know that when I'm with you, I feel like maybe the world isn't as broken as I thought. Like maybe there's still room for good things to happen. Are you asking me on a date? Victoria asked quietly. I think I'm asking for more than that, but we can start with a date if that's easier. Victoria smiled. I'd like that. Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at dating. I work too much. I'm difficult and stubborn, and I have trust issues that would fill a psychiatric textbook. I have a 12-year-old son who's smarter than both of us, a dead wife I still miss every day, and enough emotional baggage to fill a warehouse. We're both disasters. Then we're perfect for each other. They went on their first official date a week later. Dinner at a small French restaurant in Brooklyn, the kind of place that didn't care about dress codes or reputations. They talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing, about Andrew's robotics club and Victoria's next project, and whether construction work was harder than running a corporation. Different kinds of hard, Ethan said. I build with my hands, you build with ideas, not sure which is more exhausting. Y'all bull. Both are exhausting when you care about getting it right. Is that what we have in common? We both care too much? Among other things. They walked through Brooklyn afterward, through neighborhoods that were being rebuilt and reimagined, past construction sites and corner stores and buildings that had stood for 100 years. This is what I love about this city, Victoria said. It's constantly becoming something new while holding on to what it was. Change and continuity at the same time. Sounds like people. Maybe. We're all works in progress, I guess. Becoming something new while carrying everything we've been. Ethan stopped walking. I'm not who I was before Sarah died. I'll never be that person again. That okay with you? I'm not who I was before my father died, or before Damien tried to destroy me. We're both different now. That's not a bad thing. No, it's not. They stood there on a Brooklyn street corner, two people who'd survived loss and betrayal and fights they shouldn't have won. And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt like maybe the future wasn't just something to survive. Maybe it was something to build. The Queensbridge Tower opened in December, 8 months after groundbreaking and exactly on schedule. The first families moved into the affordable housing units just before Christmas. Ethan was there the day the first moving truck pulled up, watching a single mother with 3 kids carry boxes into a 2-bedroom apartment she could actually afford. Victoria stood next to him. "This is what it was all for, right here." "Yeah, it is, At. Thank you, Ethan, for believing in this when everyone else thought I was crazy." "You are crazy, but that's not always a bad thing." The building filled slowly over the next few weeks. Families on the lower floors, young professionals on the upper floors. The community center opened, and suddenly there was a daycare and a health clinic and job training programs all in one building, the kind of resource that changed neighborhoods. The board was thrilled. Investors were interested. Other cities started calling, asking if Hale Development could replicate the model. Victoria's crazy, idealistic project had worked, and Ethan had proven that a construction worker could run a billion-dollar project without compromising his values or his vision. Margaret Ross called him into her office 3 months after the building opened. "Mr. Cole, the board would like to offer you a permanent position as Director of Construction for Hale Development Group. You'd oversee all our projects, manage site supervisors, work directly with Victoria on project design and implementation. Significant salary increase, full benefits, equity stake in the company." Ethan stared at her. "You're serious?" "Completely, Ethan. You've earned this. Multiple times over." "I'll need to think about it." "Ishkaswam. Of course, take your time, but Ethan, you belong here. I hope you know that." Ethan talked it over with Andrew that night. "So you'd be like a boss?" Andrew asked. "More like a boss of bosses. I'd manage the people who manage the construction crews." "Would you still build things?" "Not with my hands, not as much, but I'd design systems, make sure projects run smoothly. It's a different kind of building." Andrew thought about that. "Would you be happy?" "I don't know. I've never done anything like this before." "Do you trust Victoria?" "Yeah, I do." "Then you should take it. Mom always said you should work with people you trust. Everyone else will just disappoint you." "Your mom was a wise woman." "I know. I miss her." "Me too, buddy. Every day." "Ok." They sat together in comfortable silence. Ethan thought about Sarah, about what she'd think of his life now. The billionaire CEO he was dating, the fancy job he was being offered, the life that looked nothing like the one they'd planned together. But he thought she'd be proud. Not of the money or the title, but of the fact that he'd survived, that he'd kept going when everything fell apart, that he'd built something new from the wreckage. That's what people did. They survived and rebuilt and kept moving forward even when it hurt. Ethan took the job. 6 months later, he and Victoria were supervising a new project in Boston. 50 stories, same mixed income model, same community focus. Standing on the empty lot that would become something meaningful, Victoria turned to him. "We should do this everywhere, every city. Prove that development doesn't have to destroy communities to be profitable." "That's ambitious." "I'm an ambitious person. You knew that when you met me." "I did. It's one of your more annoying qualities." She laughed. "You love my annoying qualities." "Maybe. Definitely." They stood there watching the sunset over Boston, and Ethan thought about the night they'd met, the restaurant, the stranger who'd looked so lost, the simple act of offering to share a table that had somehow changed everything. Life was strange like that. You never knew which small moment would become the pivot point, which ordinary decision would alter your entire trajectory. "What are you thinking?" Victoria asked. "That I'm glad I went to that restaurant, that I was there when you needed someone to be there?" "Me too, though I have to say you've complicated my life considerably. You've complicated mine too, but in a good way. The best way, yes." They went back to their hotel, made plans for the Boston project, argued about contractor bids and community partnerships and zoning regulations. Normal things. Work things. The kind of daily struggles that made life feel real and purposeful. Andrew was doing well. Thriving, even. He'd made the robotics team. His grades were good. He'd started asking about colleges, about what he wanted to study. Sometimes Ethan would catch him looking at pictures of Sarah and they'd talk about her together. Remember her together. Keep her alive in the ways that mattered. grief didn't disappear. It just became part of the foundation you built on, another layer of who you were. Ethan learned that you could lose everything and still find reasons to keep going, that sometimes the worst moments led to the best transformations, that kindness mattered more than power, and integrity mattered more than success. He learned that love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone who made you want to be better than you were, someone who challenged you and supported you and refused to let you settle for less than you deserved. Victoria taught him that, taught him to believe in himself the way he'd always believed in the structures he built, to see his own worth instead of just his utility. And maybe that was the real lesson in all of this. Not the corporate intrigue or the dramatic confrontations, or the buildings that rose floor by floor into the sky. The lesson was simpler than that. Sometimes you walk into a crowded restaurant looking for a few hours of peace, and you find something you didn't know you were searching for. Sometimes a stranger becomes the person who changes your life. Sometimes one small act of kindness ripples outward in ways you never imagined. And sometimes, when everything falls apart, you discover that falling apart was the only way to rebuild yourself into something stronger. Ethan Cole had lost a wife, a job, his sense of security, and identity. He'd been knocked down by life and by men who thought they had the power to keep him there. But he'd gotten back up. He'd fought for something that mattered. He'd built not just buildings, but a new life from the ruins of the old one. And he'd learned that maybe that's what all of us are doing, building and rebuilding, falling and getting back up, surviving the worst and finding reasons to hope for the best. The construction worker and the billionaire. Two people from different worlds who met in the middle and decided to build something together. Not just buildings, but a life, a family, a future worth fighting for. And in the end, that's all any of us can do. Show up, do the work, believe that tomorrow might be better than today. And when someone needs a place to sit down, offer them a chair. You never know what might happen next. You never know who might change your life. All you can do is be there when it matters. That's enough. That's everything.